Hey my dear listener, before we start, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Comment down where are you from and what's your time right now. Let's jump into the video. Story 1. The Housemaid's Day. Life in a grand London townhouse. The hour is just past 5, though no clock chimes this deep in the servants' quarters. You feel it in your bones, in the sting behind your eyes, in the chill that clings to the damp stone floor. You rise in darkness not just because it is your duty, but because if you don't, the rhythm of the entire household falters. You are a housemaid in a Victorian townhouse, one of the dozens tucked neatly into a fashionable square in London's Belgravia district. It is 1875. The city is groaning under the weight of progress railways, soot, and sermons, but none of that touches the marble doorframe of the Barrington residence, nor the routines that guide its human machinery. Down here below the stairs, no light enters save the glow of the gas lamp in the hallway. You dress quickly, woolen stockings, thick black dress, stiff apron. Your day begins not with tea nor breakfast but with grates and ashes. For while the fine family sleeps under feathered quilts and gas chandeliers, your hands will already be blackened with soot. Your first task, light the fires. Lighting the day. There are 28 fireplaces in this house, and not one may be cold by the time the family descends for breakfast. You carry your supplies, newspaper, kindling, a steel firelighter, and a small shovel. Each grate must be emptied, each hearth swept, before you rebuild the fire. The drawing room requires special care. The mistress of the house detests ash dust on her carpets. The library fire smokes if you don't open the flue just so. You move quickly but carefully. You've learned, through bitter reprimands, to kneel on old rags so you don't dirty your knees. And always, always, silence. The family must never hear you. You are to be as invisible as the steam that rises from the scullery sinks. Upstairs, downstairs. To the casual observer, the house functions like clockwork. Breakfast appears, fires crackle, boots are polished, doorbells are answered. But to you, the house is a hive. From the butler's pantry to the kitchen passage, it hums with effort. You and your fellow housemaids, 2 of you in a house this size, cover every inch, every stair, every doorknob. Each housemaid is assigned floors. Your current station is the 2nd and 3rd. That includes the drawing room, the mistress's bedroom, and the guest chambers. You must dust the mantels, wipe the picture frames, and ensure the chamber pots are emptied. It is a mark of failure if the water jug in the guest room is less than full, or if any mirror shows a streak in the morning light. There is no glory in your labor. There is only correctness. Breakfast below, service above. At 7:00, the servants take their meal. A dry slice of bread, weak tea, and occasionally porridge if the cook is generous. The kitchen, still warm from the morning's first fires, offers a brief moment of comfort, but conversation is minimal. Each minute spent seated is a minute stolen from duty. The butler presides. He speaks rarely, but his silence is commanding. You eat and then rise without being asked. At 8:00, the family awakens. Now the rhythm quickens. You assist the lady's maid with preparations, warming irons, laying out clothing, fetching hot water. You've learned to predict the mistress's moods by the way she opens her dressing room door. Today, her slippers are left askew. A bad mood. Later, as the family takes breakfast, you polish brass. Not with polish never, as it dulls over time, but with flannel cloths and elbow grease. Your hands are red and rough. Still, every knob must shine. The door handles, the stair rails, the banisters. The family will not notice, but the housekeeper will. A life measured in stairs. By mid-morning, you've climbed the stairs over 50 times. Stairs are how you measure your hours now. How many times up to the drawing room? How many down to fetch coal? How many sideways glances from the footman as he carries in the post? Your boots are heavy. The air on the 2nd floor smells faintly of lavender and linen. You catch your breath in a linen closet, only for a moment, before you are called to clean the mistress's writing desk. She's left a smear of sealing wax on the blotter. You remove it with vinegar and a cloth. No one notices. That is the point. Dust and decorum. You clean, you polish, you scrub. You make beds, refill pitchers, sweep under rugs. In the nursery, you wipe away milk stains and fold muslin cloths. You aren't to speak unless spoken to. If you must pass a family member in the hall, you are to lower your head and press against the wall. Sometimes you hear them laugh. A sharp, sudden peal of delight from the breakfast room. It is jarring like a sound from another world. You do not laugh. You rarely smile. But once you did, when the baby in the nursery gripped your finger with surprising strength. He is too young to know that you are meant to be invisible. The mistress's bell. At 11:15, a bell rings. Not a loud bell, but a specific one. You know the sound immediately, the mistress's sitting room. There are over 20 bell pulls in the house, each rigged with a wire system that leads to the servants' hallway. Each bell is labeled in fine script. You are expected to know them all. You hurry, not run, to answer. Inside, the mistress wants a note delivered. You curtsy, take it, and depart. You do not speak, only nod. The note will go to the post room, where the footman will take it into town. You, meanwhile, return to dusting. The afternoon is not far off. But before that comes lunch, and for you, another hour of scrubbing in silence. Unresolved thought. How does a young girl from the country, barely 14 when she first descended those basement steps, survive the grueling expectations and invisible existence of a life spent in service? The morning haze has given way to the pale clarity of a London midday, filtering dimly through the sheer curtains of the drawing room. But below stairs, you would not know it. The world down here is all lamplight, brass, and echoing footsteps. Your day, far from nearing its peak, is only gathering momentum. Your name may not be remembered in ledgers or journals, but your imprint is on every polished hinge, every silent hallway, every freshly laundered napkin set neatly on the sideboard. You are a housemaid, and if the household's machine must run smoothly, it is your legs that are the gears. A house in motion. At noon, the rhythm of the house changes. The family is engaged with correspondence, visitors, or light pursuits. The master is often at his club by now. The mistress may be writing letters or preparing to take a carriage into town. The older children are with their tutors, the youngest with the nursemaid. For you, there is no such change of pace. Noon means chamber work, linen duties, and cleaning rooms that have already been cleaned once that morning. Dust settles quickly in London. Coal soot invades every crevice. The city, in all its grimy grandeur, makes your job endless. You fetch clean linens from the attic cupboard and deliver fresh towels to each washstand. You refill coal scuttles from the cellar. The scullery maid handles dishes. The cook prepares luncheon. But the brunt of tidying those unseen, silent, continuous motions falls to you. A guest has arrived unexpectedly. You are sent to tidy the blue guest room again, despite doing it not 2 hours ago. You smooth the bedclothes, adjust the curtain tassels, and align the edges of the rug by eye. Then you polish the mirror until it's clear enough to reflect your own tired face. But you never pause to look at yourself. Life among linens. One of your regular duties is the linen cupboard, an unremarkable wooden closet in a narrow, hot hallway near the back stair. It holds all manner of cloth, table linens, towels, bedsheets, pillowcases, handkerchiefs, and doilies. Folding is an art, not in the creative sense, but in the rigid expectations of symmetry. Corners must align, stacks must remain neat, and labels handwritten by the housekeeper in fine copperplate must face outward. You are responsible for inventory, at least informally. You notice when a monogrammed napkin goes missing or when a towel is fraying. You report it to the housekeeper, who makes a note in her ledger. Sometimes old linens are cut into rags. You don't waste a thread in this house. Even rags have purpose, for polishing boots, rubbing brass, blotting spills. You make use of everything, even your own fatigue. The hall boy and the pecking order. You pass the hall boy on your way to the back passage. He's barely 12, arms smudged with coal from the morning's deliveries. You nod, but don't speak. He's lower than you in the hierarchy, and while there's little comfort in being a step above the bottom, it is something. In a world where position is everything, you learn to value even the narrowest rung. He sweeps the front steps and is expected to be seen even less than you. Still, you pity him. His bed is under the stairs, his uniform too large, his hands already cracked from cold water. There is no one softer beneath him. You were once new, too. A country girl with wide eyes and raw hands, unsure of which spoon to polish first or how to fold a bed sheet properly. You learned quickly. The house does not allow mistakes. Luncheon for the family, scraps for the staff. As the family takes luncheon in the dining room upstairs, cold meats, salads, pies, those below stairs prepare to eat what remains from the previous day. There is always a meal, though rarely a fresh one. The cook, if she's in a good mood, sets aside a bit of meat for the maids. You eat standing, a plate balanced on a crate or the edge of the work table. Talking is discouraged, unless hushed and brief. The housekeeper and cook take their places in the small servants' sitting room. The butler eats separately, with a small decanter of sherry if the master allows. You chew quickly. Food is fuel, nothing more. There's no chance to sit long. A bell rings 3 sharp tings from the breakfast room. You swallow your last bite and wipe your hands on your apron. Polish and protocol. One of the more tedious duties comes now, polishing. There is always something to shine. Brass door handles, copper pots, silver serving spoons, though those are usually the butler's domain. You take a cloth and begin with the banister railings, then the umbrella stand, then the knobs on the sideboard in the drawing room. There is something strangely satisfying in the work. You can see the results immediately. The dull surface becomes reflective. The fingerprints vanish. The object regains its proper order. Sometimes polishing is a form of meditation. Other times, it's a reminder that you, too, must remain gleaming and composed at all times. Dirt belongs only on your hands, not your face, not your uniform, not your attitude. The housekeeper's inspections. At 2:30, the housekeeper walks the rooms. She inspects with a calm and unforgiving eye. Her fingertips glide over tabletops, mantels, and shelves. If she finds dust, she does not raise her voice, she merely notes the infraction in a ledger. 3 infractions and you may lose your half-day off. 5, and your pay may be docked. The housekeeper is not cruel. She is firm. She was once a housemaid, too. Her power is limited to her realm, but here, in these walls, she is queen. You fear her far more than the lady of the house, for it is the housekeeper who notices your work or lack of it. The children's nap time. If the children are in the house, they nap at this hour. This is your one reprieve from stair creaks and accidental noises. You tiptoe across carpets. You slide doors instead of opening them. But even silence is labor. You sweep the front hall, dust the banisters again, clean the brass bell pulls. The house must be quieter than thought itself. You envy the nursemaid. Her charges sleep in soft blankets. She may doze in a chair so long as no one sees her. You never sit, not really. Once, you leaned against a wall for too long and were scolded. Tea things in drawing rooms. By 4:00, tea service approaches. The silver tray must be polished, the china selected, the biscuits arranged. You prepare the drawing room by adjusting chairs, shaking crumbs from cushions, ensuring the flowers are fresh. Though you are not the one to serve, this is the domain of the parlor maid. You make sure everything is in place. The parlor maid will walk in like a ghost, silent and graceful, but you set the stage for her performance. Later you'll remove the tray, wipe the crumbs and wash the china, but only once the family leaves the room, never while they are present. You are the one who appears only in absence. a changing world beyond the curtains. Outside, the world is changing. You hear it in snippets, conversations among footmen, gossip from the cook, a letter read aloud in the servants' hall. There are suffragettes in Manchester. Gaslight gives way to electric bulbs in some parts of the city. Even talk of unions, whispered and dangerous. But these things are not for you. You clean a house that belongs to the past, a house built on unspoken rules and daily repetition. Here, time does not gallop forward, it walks in circles. Still you wonder. The clock and the waiting. The grandfather clock in the front hall strikes 5. Soon the evening rituals begin, but for now there is a strange lull, a moment of almost quiet. The air holds still like breath before a sigh. You sit briefly in the scullery, hidden behind a stack of towels. Not for long, just enough to stretch your legs. You've been on your feet for 10 hours. Your back aches. Your arms tremble faintly from polishing brass. You do not think of the morning, nor of the evening to come, only of the moment when your body is still. Then a bell rings again. Unresolved point. The day is not done. What happens when the lamps are lit, the dinner is served, and the silence becomes even more exacting? How does a housemaid maintain her pace and her place after sundown? The hour is past 6. Shadows lengthen on the drawing room walls, and the house breathes in a different rhythm now. Gaslights hiss softly behind fluted glass, their pale glow warming the wallpaper's rich damask. The family prepares for dinner, and so must you, but in your own way. Not with dresses or jewels, but with quiet industry and watchful presence. You, the housemaid, have worked more than 12 hours already, and the most delicate work of all still lies ahead. Evening is when a housemaid must be most invisible. The grand illusion of dinner. At precisely 7:00, the family gathers in the dining room. The butler presides, the footman serves, and the courses proceed with mechanical grace. Soup, fish, roast, pudding, cheese. Everything happens as if by magic. But it is not magic. It is you and others like you. Your role is not in the dining room itself, but in the choreography surrounding it. You ensure that fresh water is available for washing. You collect discarded linens, sweep crumbs, tidy the drawing room where the family will take coffee. And when the meal concludes, you are ready to appear only after they leave. You open windows to let the cloying smell of roast mutton escape. You wipe down the polished table, remove wax drippings from the candlesticks, and brush down the chairs for crumbs. The dining room must be reset before the clock strikes 9. Drawing room duties. While the family retires to the drawing room, sometimes with guests you slip in after them only when needed. The parlor maid handles serving the coffee. Your job is behind the scenes. If a guest removes a glove and sets it aside, you remember where it was placed. If a child leaves a toy half hidden under a settee, you collect it silently. If the mistress wrinkles her nose and opens a window, you note which curtain she touches. You'll clean that one tomorrow, even if it looks perfectly fine. You are the watcher in the walls. There is no list of these tasks. They are not written in any manual. You learn them by watching, listening, remembering, and by disappearing at the right moment. The turn down. One of the final duties of your evening is the turn down service. A housemaid slips into each occupied bedroom just before bedtime. She folds back the covers, removes day pillows, fluffs the sleeping pillows, and sometimes draws the curtains. Water is refilled in the washstand. The chamber pot is checked and discreetly replaced. Any coal ashes in the fireplace are quietly removed. You leave nothing personal behind. No smell of soap, no wrinkle in the carpet, just a room prepared as if by unseen hands. If done well, the family will never think of it. If done poorly, they will speak of it for days. Late-night laundry and mending. Even after turn down, there is often work to do. Linens that arrived late from the wash house must be sorted. Damp towels must be hung. A stocking torn earlier in the day must be mended before morning. You may join the scullery made at the back of the laundry room, where steam rises from a bubbling copper boiler. Clothes hang like ghosts in the low heat. There is no conversation, just the rhythm of water and the hiss of the iron. You press a handkerchief slowly, carefully. A burn mark would mean a reprimand, worse replacement. The house does not forget mistakes. Moments of quiet. Sometimes, late in the evening, there is a strange quiet in the house. The family has gone to bed. The butler is in his pantry reading the evening paper. The cook has retired to her room. The gas lights are turned low. The bells are still. You find yourself alone in the back stair, hands tucked into your apron, listening to the creaks of the house settling. In that stillness, the house feels different. Not grand, but hollow. All day it demanded your attention, your energy, your silence, but now it seems to exhale like a tired beast. And for just a moment, you breathe too. The servants' bedrooms. Your room is small, a low-ceilinged space under the eaves, reached by a back stair so narrow you must turn sideways. You share it with another housemaid, Mary, who snores softly and talks of marriage in her sleep. There is a narrow bed, a basin for washing, a worn Bible on the shelf. You have 2 dresses, 1 apron, and a tin box with a letter from home. There is no fireplace, only a draft from the cracked window. Yet it is yours. You undress quietly, folding your clothes precisely. Your boots sit near the door, ready for tomorrow. You wash your face with cold water, bite back a shiver, and slip under the thin blanket. Your limbs ache. Your eyes sting, but you do not complain. There is no one to complain to, and the house demands your strength again in just a few hours. Dreams and realities. If you dream, it is not of ballrooms or silk gowns. It is of fresh air and green fields, or perhaps just of sleep without bells. Sometimes you imagine what your life might be if you married. A small cottage, a child or 2, no mistress, no coal scuttle. But then you wake and the bells begin again. You are not here for dreams. You are here to serve. You are one of thousands of young women from rural villages, pulled to London by poverty or promise. The city swallows you, dresses you in black wool, and expects you never to speak unless spoken to. And yet there is pride in your work. Pride in the perfection of a polished banister, in a bed turned down just right, in a house that hums like a song because of your unseen labor. The toll and the tenacity. Most housemaids do not last long. Backaches, frostbitten fingers, accidents with hot irons, or simply exhaustion send many home again or to other positions, less grand but no less grueling. Some climb the ranks. The lucky few become housekeepers or ladies' maids. Others marry and leave service entirely. You don't know which path awaits you, only that you must rise before the sun every day for as long as the house requires. Each day is the same and yet different. Guests arrive, seasons change, but your work remains a quiet constancy behind the grandeur. The house as a living thing. You come to know the house like a living body. The way the back stair creaks on the 4th step, the room that's always too cold, the bell that sometimes rings without being pulled, just a wire stretched too tight. The house is old. It shifts and groans. You patch its weaknesses, polish its bones, and hide its blemishes, and in doing so it becomes part of you. Years from now, if you pass this house again, you will remember its smell, its size, the rhythm of its bells. You may never be remembered by name, but your hands shaped its days. Reflection and closing. To be a Victorian housemaid was not simply to work, it was to live within the architecture of someone else's comfort. Your day was measured in other people's needs, in the spaces you could enter and the ones you could not. Yet you were indispensable. Without you, the family's illusions would collapse, the fire would be cold, the silver would tarnish, the beds would go unmade. You were the breath behind the silence, the motion behind the stillness. And in the quiet of the night, After the last candle is snuffed and the final footstep fades, only you remain to bear witness to the hidden pulse of the house. Story 2. Coal dust and tea leaves, the underbelly of Victorian kitchens. If you find yourself drifting into slumber, imagine now the heat of a coal-fired kitchen, the clang of cast iron, and the hiss of scalding water against a scrubbed stone floor. It is morning, but not the pleasant sort. No birdsong or sunlight, only steam and cinders. Welcome to the Victorian kitchen, a world of sweat and soot beneath the polished civility of the drawing room. Here, order is maintained not with flourishes or fanfare, but by the cook and those who labor silently at her side. Below stairs, the kitchen is not just a room. It is a battlefield, a workshop, a laboratory. It is the heart of the house, but a heart that must beat unnoticed. The first to rise. In every grand house, someone must be first to wake, and often it is the kitchen staff. The scullery maid stirs before dawn. Her hands, red and raw, dip into freezing water to scrub yesterday's pans. She is too young for most tasks, but not too young to carry water, clean the copper pots, and stoke the kitchen range. The cook arrives next, not long after. She is not a servant in the way the others are. She commands. She organizes. She remembers every guest's preference and every dish served in the last 5 years. She is as powerful below stairs as the mistress is above, and perhaps more respected. Today is Thursday. That means roast mutton for dinner, pies for luncheon, and fish if it's coming fresh from the market. The menu never strays far, but variation lives in the details: the cut of meat, the sauces, the arrangement of vegetables. The cook considers it all before the footman has even rolled up the blinds. You, if you're assisting, begin by grinding coffee beans in a hand-cranked mill. Then you sift flour, weigh sugar, and fetch butter from the cold larder carried on a tray lined with slate. No detail is too small, no step unimportant. This is precision disguised as monotony. Fire and steel. The kitchen range is the beast at the center of it all. Massive, blackened, always hot. It devours coal like a starving animal and must be kept alive from morning until late at night. Feeding it is both an art and a science. Too much coal, and the oven scorches the sponge cake. Too little, and the roast goes pale. You are taught to place your hand inside the oven just for a second to test the heat. No thermometer, just instinct. On one side of the range, the ovens. On the other, a simmering boiler for soups and a pair of griddles for frying. Above, hooks for pots. Beneath, ash drawers. Each surface must be cleaned, blacked, and polished at day's end, regardless of how many hours you've worked. The range is the master of the kitchen. It gives no second chances. Market day and ledgers. By mid-morning, the kitchen is alive with preparation. The footman has returned from the market with a wicker basket of goods. The cook inspects it with a practiced eye, rejecting limp celery, sniffing suspicious fish, noting the lack of proper eggs. She records everything in the kitchen ledger: weights, prices, quality. The mistress may never read these notes, but the cook writes them anyway. It is her empire to manage. There is a strict budget for every week, and exceeding it risks a scolding or worse, suspicion of theft. The cook must plan not only meals but leftovers. Yesterday's bones become today's broth. Unused yolks become tomorrow's custard. You're learning that nothing is wasted. Even orange peels are candied for Sunday tea. The scullery, a place without glamour. While the cook works in rhythm and command, the scullery maid labors in a world of filth. She cleans the fish. She peels potatoes. She scrapes hardened grease from roasting pans and descales kettles until her fingers crack. She never touches a serving dish and rarely sees the table where the family eats. You assist her when the cook is satisfied for the moment. You haul water from the pump in iron buckets, heavy enough to strain your back. You scrub floors on hands and knees, using sand to scour stone. The smell of boiled onions and bleach lingers on your skin. The scullery is not romantic, it is relentless. But even here there is pride. When the floor gleams and the pans hang dry in perfect rows, you know you've done well. Recipes by memory and muscle. The cook rarely refers to written recipes. She carries them in her head, passed down from the mistress who trained her or the housekeeper she once served under. Quantities are judged by feel. The dough's readiness is felt in the fingertips. The seasoning is known by scent, not measurement. You watch closely when allowed. Every movement matters. The folding of a pastry, the whisking of cream, the larding of beef. Today she lets you pluck parsley from the herb shelf, a rare privilege. She tells you gruffly that presentation is everything. A roast must not only be well cooked, it must arrive at the table glistening, garnished, triumphant. The family never sees the sweat behind the gloss. They see only the platter, perfect and steaming. Tea time in the shadow of the rain. By 4, tea must be prepared. Crumpets toasted, cakes sliced, sugar cubes arranged with tongs. You assist in arranging the tiered trays and selecting the finer tea strainers from the locked cabinet. There is an almost sacred quality to the preparation. The mistress's mood often depends on the quality of her tea service. If the crumpets arrive lukewarm, if the cream has a skin, if the marmalade is not her preferred kind, repercussions follow. But they do not fall on her maid. They fall on the cook, and through her, on everyone else. You learn to work not only with care but with awareness. The kitchen is not just a place of labor, it is a place of performance. Dinner looms. Dinner is the main event of the day. Multiple courses, timed to the minute. All hot dishes must be plated and served while still steaming, yet the kitchen is far from the dining room. This means coordination. The footmen prepare silver domes. The cook barks orders like a military officer. You run dishes to the dumbwaiter or stand aside while the servant's lift is loaded. Then you rush back to begin preparing for the next course. Each dish has its own rhythm, some roasted for hours, others assembled in moments. Saucepans hiss and bubble. A pie is scorched slightly and the cook curses under her breath. No time to stop. Mistakes are absorbed, concealed, corrected. A culture of quiet survival. No one in the kitchen speaks unless necessary. There is no time for chatter, and gossip is dangerous. The wrong word in the wrong ear can end a position. Still, you learn things. The undercook once worked at a manor where the lady fainted during every luncheon. The kitchen maid who cried her first month now carries herself like stone. The cook once worked in a duke's household, but left suddenly, no one says why. Secrets are preserved like jam, sealed tight, stored for later. Even your own story is not freely shared. A world below, yet entirely complete. You begin to understand that the kitchen is a complete universe. It has its own hierarchy, rituals, punishments, and rewards. It exists entirely beneath the refined world above stairs. Yet without it, the illusion of the Victorian household crumbles. The coal dust that settles in your apron is the same dust that fuels the fires of comfort. The drippings from the roast are the richness on the family's plate. The scraps you eat are the remnants of splendor. You are not seen, but your work is felt in every room. And still the evening awaits. Unresolved thought. As the dinner bell rings and the cook wipes her brow, what happens behind the kitchen door when disaster strikes? How does a single mistake threaten to unravel the rigid choreography of the Victorian household? By the time the family above stairs takes their seats in the dining room, the kitchen below is already simmering with pressure, not just from the saucepans or the range fire, but from the constant, barely visible threat of collapse. A single mistake, a missed timing, a cold plate, a cracked tart shell can unravel an entire evening of quiet perfection. And tonight, the kitchen teeters on such an edge. A problem with the pudding. Dinner service begins as usual. The butler appears at the dumbwaiter, announces the first course, and vanishes with the soup. The cook stands motionless at the center of the chaos, issuing quiet orders as you and the kitchen maid scurry to keep pace. And then the trouble begins. You hear the cook curse beneath her breath, not loudly, but with a tone that freezes you mid-motion. The blancmange hasn't set. It was supposed to chill all afternoon in the cold pantry, but the new undercook moved it to a warmer shelf to make room for a joint of venison. Now the pudding trembles like unset jelly in its mold, refusing to hold its shape. And it is scheduled as the final course, a highlight of the meal, anticipated by the mistress and her guests. In this kitchen, there are no do-overs. Dinner is served in order. The footman will descend in 10 minutes for the final course, and the cook has no suitable replacement. You brace for shouting, but the cook only narrows her eyes. She picks up the mold, inspects it, and without a word hands it to you. "Figure something out," she says. Improvisation in silence. There is no room for panic, only problem solving. You scan the shelves. A jar of preserved fruit, too sweet. Spotted dick, not ready. A cheese board, too informal. Your fingers tremble slightly as you reach for a tin of ginger biscuits still warm from the earlier bake. You layer them, add a spoonful of plum preserve, and disguise the unset blancmange beneath a garnish of candied orange peel and cream. It's not perfect, but it will serve. You pass it back just in time. The cook inspects it with a glance, nods once, and slides the plate to the waiting dumbwaiter. As the bell rings for the final course, the pudding ascends to the dining room. You exhale slowly. No one will know. Repercussions. Later, after the dishes return, you hear it from the scullery maid. They like the pudding. A small smile twitches at the corners of your mouth, but it fades quickly. The cook did not praise your improvisation, and she likely never will. In the hierarchy of the kitchen, success is assumed, failure punished. And yet in your bones, you know, you saved the meal. This quiet satisfaction is your reward. Clean up and more than dishes. Dinner ends, but your work does not. Plates must be scraped and rinsed, pans scoured, silver polished, table linen soaked. The kitchen smells of goose fat and leeks, of scorched sugar and bone broth. You clean with aching arms, kneeling to wipe the lower tiles with carbolic soap. The water turns black with grease. Your apron sticks to your back, and still you work. You clean the bread board, last a flat slab of wood, stained with years of use. It's smooth now from thousands of cuts. Like you, it has learned its role through wear. The danger of mistakes. Mistakes in the kitchen aren't always so easily corrected. Some months ago, the undercook left a rag too close to the stove. The fire was put out quickly, but the smell lingered for days. She was dismissed the next morning without a reference. The scullery maid once dropped a tureen, a gift from the family's wedding. It cracked in two. Her wages were docked for a month. Another time, a roast was delivered undercooked. The cook took the blame, but the cause was traced to a faulty dampener on the range. A housemaid had adjusted it earlier, unaware of its purpose. She was transferred to laundry duties and never allowed near the kitchen again. No one shouts when things go wrong. Punishment comes quietly, through fewer tasks, shorter replies, and eventually silence. And silence in service means dismissal. Power dynamics beneath the apron. The cook is the kitchen's queen, but even she lives under threat. If she overspends the weekly budget or displeases the mistress too often, she'll be replaced. No role here is truly secure. You begin to notice the subtle rivalries. The undercook mutters when the cook forgets a garnish. The scullery maid snatches tasks meant for you. The kitchen maid tries to gain the butler's favor, knowing a good word from him can change her position. It is not always malice. Sometimes it is simply survival. There is only so much space to move up. Everyone knows this. An evening off. Rarely, a kitchen worker is granted an evening off, a few hours, no more. When your turn comes, you spend it walking the edge of Hyde Park. The world smells different outside the house, less of bleach and steam, more of horses, fog, and roasted chestnuts. You sit near a lamppost, watching a young couple argue quietly in a cab. Their driver smokes a pipe and hums to himself. For a moment, you feel like someone else. Then the bells chime 9, time to return. The cook will know if you're even 5 minutes late. Gossip and ghosts. Later that week, the kitchen hears a rumor. The mistress has invited a cousin from the countryside. This means one more place setting, one more dish, and crucially, a chance for a new impression. The cook adds a course to the next dinner: oysters in aspic, chilled over shaved ice. The kitchen maid claims this dish once made a colonel weep with joy. The scullery maid swears it smells like pond water. You remain silent, unsure if you'll be asked to help prepare it or just clean up after it. Rumors are as common as grease here. Someone once said the butler fought in India. Another insists the pantry boy can read Latin. No one knows for sure, but gossip, like steam, rises. And the house has seen many like you come and go young women with sore feet and steady hands, moving quietly through history, remembered only by the recipes they followed. Coal dust and tea leaves. You come to see that the very things discarded by the house, the ash, the peel, the biscuit crumb, tell its real story. Coal dust, swept from the stove's edge, reveals the hours burned to maintain warmth. Tea leaves at the bottom of a cup mark moments of pause and privilege. The scraps in the bin speak of abundance and of what you never taste. There's a poetry to it all, hidden in grime, a rhythm behind the recipes. You find comfort in the routine, even knowing it is endless. And perhaps in the end, the kitchen survives because its people do. Because no matter how hot the range, how sharp the reprimand, someone always wipes the slate clean and begins again. The cook's quiet respect. One evening, weeks after the blancmange incident, the cook pauses as you stack a set of copper lids. She does not turn to face you, but she speaks clearly. You did well that night. You nod, unsure if you should smile. Praise in the kitchen is rare. That sentence will echo in your memory for days. You resume your duties, but your hands feel lighter. Unresolved point. What happens when the rules of the kitchen are broken not by accident, but by intention? Can a single act of rebellion from below ever reach the drawing rooms above? There's an odd stillness in the kitchen this morning. Not silence, there's always some distant clink of iron or whoosh of fire, but a stillness in the people. Movements are precise, too precise. Words are few. Glances are careful. Something is brewing, and it's not just tea. To understand rebellion in a Victorian kitchen, you must first understand that it is rarely loud. In service, defiance is a whisper, not a shout. It's the ladle left unpolished, the roast turned a moment too late, the towel not folded quite right. But today, it begins with a letter. A notice and a stir. The cook receives the envelope from the butler without ceremony. The paper is thick. The seal is broken quickly. Her expression is unchanged, but you see the way she folds the letter twice, carefully, and sets it aside. She doesn't speak of it until hours later, while you stir bread dough. "I'm being replaced," she says flatly. The rolling pin slips in your hand. Not dismissed, not retiring, replaced. She says no more, but the implications fill the kitchen like smoke. No one is sure why. There's been no failed meal, no scandal, no dispute with the mistress, at least not one witnessed. But the letter is official. Her replacement is already selected. She has 2 weeks. The reaction below stairs. The kitchen staff is shaken, though no one says it outright. The undercook is visibly uneasy. He depended on her guidance. The kitchen maid keeps her head down. Even the scullery maid works more quietly than usual. The order of the kitchen has been disrupted, and order is the only thing that stands between routine and chaos. You hear whispers. They say it's because she overstepped. She told the mistress her cousin's cooking was dreadful. Maybe it was the bill for that Madeira wine. She was too clever for her own good. No one knows, everyone guesses. Above all, there is fear because if even the cook can be replaced, what hope have the rest? A spark of defiance. 3 days later, the new menus arrive. They are unfamiliar, dishes with foreign names, complicated methods. Frenchified, the cook mutters. Sauces made from reductions, game birds stuffed and sewn, the sort of cuisine seen in townhouses trying to outdo their neighbors. The kitchen is expected to learn them in time for a Friday dinner with important guests. But the cook no longer hides her feelings. She calls the sauce fussy, the fish overworked. And when the butler implies she should practice ahead of time, she replies coolly, "I know how to cook. I don't need to play with the food." Then she glances at you. "You've got quick hands," she says. "Let's see if you can fold puff pastry like a French girl." Learning on the edge. Over the next few days, she teaches you the new dishes. It is a subtle act of defiance, not refusing to comply, but training you instead of the undercook. She passes you the measuring spoon, not him. She demonstrates how to glaze a tart for presentation, how to slice veal thin as paper. You learn with quiet hunger. Each skill is survival, and perhaps something more a legacy. "She'll hate this custard," the cook says one afternoon, placing a vanilla pod beside your bowl. "She wants the fashionable version, no substance." You look at her, unsure how to respond. "It won't be my kitchen by next week," she adds. "Might as well teach someone who gives a damn." The dinner that nearly failed. Friday arrives. The house is tense. Guests are expected from Bath, a distant cousin and his wife, known for their rigid palates and unkind reviews. The mistress wants perfection. The master wants discretion. The cook wants none of it. Dinner begins smoothly. The first course is a consommé, clear, hot, rich, then a dish of turbot in wine sauce, then cold game pie. All passes well, until the final course, pears poached in claret. You're holding the tray when it happens. A footman, new and nervous, stumbles on the kitchen stair. The dish topples sideways. The poached pears slide. The sauce spills. The cook doesn't shout. She merely gestures to the basin. "We've got 3 minutes." You and the kitchen maid wipe down the plate edges. The pears are salvaged. The sauce is replenished. The cook sprinkles crushed almonds on top to hide a blemish. It goes up to the dining room. No one notices. Later you hear that the guests praised it, called it well-balanced. The mistress is pleased. The butler relaxes. But the cook only mutters, unbalanced more like, "I gave them what they deserved." The Last Supper. Her final day arrives. The kitchen is quiet that morning. She prepares a farewell meal not for the family but for the staff. A simple stew, warm, hearty, full of flavor, nothing trendy or garnished, just food that fills and comforts. You eat it in the scullery, standing. When the new cook arrives, she is a younger woman with elegant gloves and a recipe book she wrote herself. She does not greet the scullery maid. She nods only at the butler. You watch the old cook leave through the tradesman's door. She does not look back. A legacy in grease and grit. You miss her immediately. The kitchen is cleaner now, colder. The new cook issues orders from the pantry, barely touching the food herself. She criticizes the shape of the pastries and tells you not to over-personalize the soup. But you remember what you learned. You fold pastry with confidence. You garnish with restraint. You whisper instructions to the kitchen maid when she hesitates. And one day, when the new cook falls ill, the butler comes to you and says, "Can you prepare the luncheon?" You do. And it is served hot, correct, complete. Quiet revolution. This is how revolution comes below stairs. Not in fire or fists, but in flour and silence. In the way a kitchen girl learns to command a pan. In the refusal to forget. In the knowledge passed hand to hand, pot to pot, without ceremony. The old cook's recipes are still in your mind, her confidence still in your spine, and in some small way she remains in the kitchen not as a name but as a method. Perhaps this is the only way women in service ever truly last, not in titles but in repetition. Reflection and closing. To work in a Victorian kitchen was to live in a world of intense structure and immense pressure. You cooked, cleaned, and complied. Yet within those boundaries you found ways to grow, to learn, to persist. Even when systems were unfair and recognition was rare, you shaped something enduring. The meals they remembered, the warmth they took for granted. And in the end, perhaps rebellion was not leaving but staying, quietly mastering your craft, refusing to be erased. One cup of tea at a time. Final thought. How many hands shaped the meals we remember, and how many names did we never learn? When labor is invisible, who decides whose legacy survives? Story 3. A day in the laundry room, steam, starch, and silence. The laundry room is not where glory resides. No guests ever see it. The mistress never ventures this far below stairs. Even the butler avoids it unless absolutely necessary. But you, if you are the laundry maid, know this space intimately. It is hot, damp, and always loud. It smells of lye soap, scorched linen, wet wool, and old steam. And from the moment you step inside, you are claimed by the rhythm of wringing, boiling, hanging, folding, and starching. The day begins before sunrise and ends long after the linens have dried, but the memory of the laundry clings, like the scent of carbolic, to everything. Morning water. The copper boiler dominates the room, built into the far wall like an iron furnace, its belly filled each morning with water you've hauled from the pump. You carry the heavy buckets, one after another, tipping them into the open copper cauldron. By the time the sun has risen over the rooftops, your shoulders burn and your apron is damp. The water must boil furiously before anything can be cleaned. A slow boil means nothing is sterilized. A boil that's too vigorous might ruin delicate lace. You've learned to judge the temperature by the way the steam curls up the wall. You open the bleach box next. The smell is sharp, chemical, a mix of lime and ash, enough to make your eyes sting. But the mistress demands her linens white, pure white, no trace of yellow or shadow, and so you measure the bleach with careful hands. The first load is tablecloths from last night's dinner. There is wine on the hem. You mutter under your breath, red wine stains are the worst. Sorting and soaking. Laundry is not thrown together. Everything must be sorted by fabric, by color, by level of soil. The nursery towels are separate from the master's shirts. The footman's gloves are washed apart from the kitchen rags. You separate delicates from rough cloth, cottons from silks, and wool from everything. One wrong pairing could ruin an entire wash. The mistress once scolded the cook for a faint scent of smoke on her tea napkin. You've never forgotten. You prepare soaking buckets, layered with flakes of hard soap. You shaved yourself with a paring knife. The water goes cold quickly, so you pour boiling liquid from the copper to warm it again. Everything here is cyclical. Wash, rinse, wring, dry, again and again. The mangle. The mangle is a hulking, iron-bolted contraption that presses water from cloth using heavy rollers and a large crank. It is your closest companion and your most dangerous one. One misstep and a finger could be crushed. You've heard stories from the other girls. A maid at the Farthington estate lost a thumb. Another cracked her wrist trying to fix a jammed apron hem. You approach the mangle with practiced reverence. Linen goes in damp, twisted tight. You turn the crank slowly, watching it flatten and squeeze. The water drips into the wooden trough below. The sheets come out flattened and ready for the line. You feel your spine ache already, and it's not yet mid-morning. The line and the wind. In the rear courtyard of the townhouse, high above the world of carriages and boots, the laundry lines stretch like tightropes. You climb the narrow servant stair to reach them 3 stories up, carrying a basket of wet sheets on your hip. The air up here is brisk. The soot from chimneys floats lazily overhead. You clip the linen with wooden pegs, one by one. Your hands are red and cold. The sheets snap in the wind. Sometimes the under-gardener offers to help if he's passing by, but only if the housekeeper isn't watching. You don't mind the solitude. Up here, the city feels far away. Below, the house is all commands and bells. Up here, there is only flapping linen and pale sky. Starch and steam. By midday, the first batch is dry. You return to the laundry room to begin starching. You've boiled the starch earlier, potato flour and water, thick and silky. Now it must be brushed onto collars, cuffs, and cravats. Stiffness is a sign of refinement. The master's shirts must hold their shape like sculpted porcelain. You lay the garments flat, brush the starch evenly, and hang them again to dry. Not too long or they'll yellow. Then comes the ironing. The flat iron ritual. The flat irons are kept near the hearth, lined up like soldiers, their handles too hot to touch. You use a thick cloth to pick one up and test it on a piece of paper. If it browns, it's ready. If it scorches, it's ruined. You begin with pillowcases, then underskirts, then the master's shirts, each pleat pressed perfectly, each button panel ironed flat. You do not rush. Speed leads to shine marks, to scorched fabric, to burns on your own arms. Ironing is not a task, it's a ritual. When you finally reach the mistress's handkerchiefs lace-edged, and as delicate as breath, you pause, straighten your back, and begin again. The unspoken rules. No one tells you the rules when you begin laundry service. You learn them by mistake and sometimes by punishment. Never leave cloth near open flame. Never overwet velvet. Never mix servants' laundry with the family. Never allow a single speck of soot on a napkin. And never, ever forget a linen in the copper pot. A forgotten garment means mildew, ruined fabric, a smell that cannot be described, only condemned. The housekeeper will notice. She always notices. A laundry maid's place. You are not seen by the family. The master never thanks you for the crispness of his cuffs. The mistress never comments on the scent of her nightgown. But they expect perfection. You are spoken of only when you fail. Yet there is dignity here in the folding of clean sheets, the whiteness of a napkin unmarred, in knowing that your hands have made something right, if only for a moment. The cook may command her realm, and the butler may wear white gloves, but you, in your soap-streaked apron and fraying cap, are the keeper of cleanliness itself. A mystery in the wash. Late in the afternoon, something unusual happens. You find a small handkerchief tucked inside one of the master's waistcoat pockets, a lady's handkerchief, embroidered with initials you don't recognize. It isn't the mistress's. You say nothing. It is not your place. You wash it, starch it, and return it with the other laundered items. But later, as you fold towels, you wonder. Unresolved thought. What secrets lie hidden in the fabric we scrub clean? In the folds of shirts and the hems of dresses, do we erase only stains or evidence? The next day begins like the last steam rising from the copper, water sloshing in pails, and the scent of soap heavy in the air. But the handkerchief still lingers in your thoughts. It was fine linen, ivory tone, not quite white. The monogram ER stitched in pale thread at the corner, delicate, carefully made, not something a tradesman's daughter would own, and certainly not something belonging to the mistress. You're not one to snoop, but when you launder the garments of the house, you see things no one else does. In this quiet corner of the servant's world, laundry does not lie. The stories in fabric. Each article of clothing tells you something. You know when the master has spent the day at the club, his collar is tinged with cigar smoke. You know when the mistress has visited a modiste, her silk skirts come back with bits of thread or fine chalk marks from fittings. You know when the children are ill, there are handkerchiefs with soft stains and pillowcases that must be boiled more than once. But you say nothing. A laundry maid is the keeper of private things. Blood, sweat, perfume, and secrets all pass through your hands. You are not allowed to forget your place, yet you remember every detail. Bleach and judgment. The sheets from the guest bedroom arrive for washing. Normally, you wouldn't question it, but the guest room hasn't been used in over a week. You remember clearly no fresh water was fetched, no fire laid. Yet here are linens that have clearly been slept in. You scrub the sheets carefully. There is no visible stain, but a faint scent of lavender that doesn't match the household's usual wash. It is possible someone used the room briefly and quietly, an overnight visitor perhaps, but you were not told, and you are always told. You rinse the sheets twice, press them flat, and hang them to dry. Still the scent lingers. Quiet shifts in the house. Something has changed in the rhythm of the household. You notice more frequent deliveries of flowers. The mistress is quieter, distracted. The master's shirts are returned for restarching more often. He claims they're not stiff enough, but you suspect he's simply restless. There's a growing silence during tea in the servants' hall. Even the cook has noticed. "That man's up to something," she mutters, carving a roast. You wonder if she's guessed. You wonder if others know. You say nothing, it's not your place. But the laundry tells you more than words ever could. The missed button. Midweek you receive a velvet waistcoat to brush and air. You find a loose button. The garment has been worn, hastily removed and put away again. You resew the button with care. But as you work, your needle pricks the fabric near the inner seam. Inside is a hidden pocket, just a sliver of cloth folded neatly. You glance inside. Nothing. But you realize the master has begun wearing this waistcoat more frequently, not for public dinners but during afternoons when he claims to be in his study, and always with fresh linen. You press it without comment, but the unease grows. Laundry as witness. Down in the laundry room, you scrub petticoats, camisoles, and bodices. Each piece arrives with its own history, friction from corsets, faint smudges at the underarms, occasional torn lace. The mistress's underthings are normally pristine. But this week they arrive rumpled, faintly perfumed, and unusually late. Then, abruptly, they stop coming altogether. For 3 days, nothing arrives from the mistress's rooms, not even her usual 2 handkerchiefs. You don't ask, you wouldn't dare, but even the housekeeper frowns slightly when she notices. You keep working. You clean the nursery linens, starch the napkins, soak the kitchen cloths, but your hands move with distraction. The laundry is trying to tell you something. A message disguised. That evening you find something tucked under a pillowcase, a second handkerchief, the same initials, ER. This one is older, more worn. The edge has a faint tear. It should have gone to rags weeks ago. But it's here now, hidden. You feel the fabric, stiff in one corner. You peel it back gently and discover a folded scrap of paper pressed flat inside. It reads, "I will be at the Mews at dusk. No more notes. You must decide." You freeze. It's not addressed. No signature, no date. You don't know who placed it, who it's for, or whether it was meant to be found. What to do? You return the handkerchief to the fresh laundry. You say nothing, but you begin watching. The next day, the master is gone for much of the afternoon. The mistress doesn't ask for tea. The cook mentions the butler received a tip to have the carriage ready at a strange hour. That evening, you slip to the edge of the Mews on the pretext of emptying the ash bin. You glance toward the alley behind the carriage house. There's a figure there. A woman. Not the mistress. A brief conversation. No embrace. Just a note passed, a nod exchanged, and then the figure disappears into a cab. You return to your soap flakes and boiling water. Your apron smells of ash. Silence as always. The next morning, the mistress sends down 3 full changes of linen, all perfectly folded, fresh handkerchiefs, a sachet of rose tucked between 2 nightgowns. She knows. The laundry room is hot again. The copper bubbles, the mangle creaks. You scrub harder than usual. Perhaps nothing will come of it. Perhaps it will be smoothed over, like wrinkles pressed from a damp collar. But you will remember. Because the laundry remembers. Reflection beneath the sheets. By week's end, you're back to the usual tasks. The mistress hosts a luncheon. The master returns late as if nothing has happened. The house resumes its rhythm. But you iron the bedsheets with care, knowing what they carried. You press the cravats, knowing who saw them last. You fold the towels with your hands still red from lye, knowing they dried the faces of people who barely know you exist. And you wonder, how many other laundresses have known too much? How many secrets live between seams? Unresolved point. What happens when the unspoken becomes too large to ignore? In a house ruled by appearances, can the truth ever rise from beneath the steam? There's something about freshly laundered linen that suggests innocence. A whiteness so complete it erases what came before: sweat, soil, tears, the human mess of living. But you know better. You, the laundry maid, understand that no matter how long something boils or how many times it's pressed, traces remain, in thread, in scent, in silence. The laundry room has taught you that clean is not the same as pure. And this week, that lesson feels more urgent than ever. The ledger. You're tasked one morning with updating the linen ledger, an oversized book kept in the housekeeper's office, listing every cloth item in the household. Sheets, napkins, towels, handkerchiefs, pillowcases, aprons, nightshirts, petticoats. Every piece has a number, every number a status, in use, in laundry, in repair, missing. You record methodically. Sheet number 42, returned clean. Napkin number 18, tear in corner, sent for mending. Handkerchief misplaced again. That last entry gives you pause. You glance up. The housekeeper is reading correspondence at her desk, spectacles low on her nose. You wait for her to mention it, perhaps the note, the name, anything. She does not. You write missing and close the book. Questions without answers. There is a new atmosphere in the house now. Not overt tension, but a quiet bracing. The mistress carries herself more stiffly, as though balancing something fragile on her head. The master is unusually generous with gratuities. Nothing is said, but everything is different. And still the laundry arrives. The sheets are freshly used but come folded as if untouched. Handkerchiefs appear with initials carefully scratched out. Servants whisper about a cousin who came and left too quickly, and a lady's maid who requested a reference without giving notice. The laundry tells you what no one else will. You scrub harder, burnishing clues into silence. The hidden rips. One afternoon, a set of the master's shirts returns with ripped seams, small tears, oddly placed, near the underarms and waist. Unusual for tailored garments. You note it quietly. Shirts don't rip there from daily wear. It suggests strain, hurried removal, or perhaps even confrontation. The mistress's bodices show something similar, tiny frays near hook closures. One corset with lacing nearly snapped. To others, it means nothing. But to you, it means something happened. Perhaps not violence, but haste, urgency. A shift in roles, something unseemly beneath layers of silk and starch. You soak them longer than usual. Tea in the servants' hall. In the servants' hall, the talk has shifted. They're not sleeping on the same floor anymore, someone says quietly. You pretend not to hear. I swear I saw her crying in the conservatory. The cook says he's been locking his study. And have you noticed, the laundry girl been quiet? At that you glance up. You've kept your observations to yourself out of duty, out of self-preservation. But now, even your silence is being noticed. The house is no longer just a house. It's a hive of whispers. The housekeeper's warning. That evening, the housekeeper corners you outside the drying room. Her voice is low, precise. You do your job well, she says, and you've got good instincts, but don't forget where you are. You nod. Things go wrong in every house, but if we start imagining things, seeing more than we're meant to, we invite trouble. Another pause. Keep your eyes on the linen, not the people wearing it. Then she walks away. A quiet choice. The next morning, another handkerchief arrives. New, no initials. You wash it like the others. You dry it carefully, iron it without a crease. But this time, you do not look for notes. You do not hold it up to the light. You simply return it folded and placed atop the master's fresh shirts. You're not naive. You haven't forgotten what you've seen. But the housekeeper is right. You were hired to clean, not to know. A day ends, the work remains. By dusk, the laundry is finished for the day. You wash your own apron last, scrubbing out the gray stains at the hem. You hang it near the window, watching it sway in the smoky evening breeze. The copper is drained, the irons cooled, the mangle wiped clean. Yet nothing feels settled. The house holds its breath. And you, the one who sees the most and has seen the least, return to your attic room, your hands raw, your thoughts folded neatly beneath layers of order. Reflection and closing. The laundry room is the memory of the house. It sees everything. It absorbs the evidence of living and attempts to make it disappear. But every garment carries its story. Even after boiling, even after starching, even after silence. To be a laundry maid is to exist in the margins just beyond the steam. You are not part of the story, but you are the one who washes away its aftermath. And that in its own way is power. Final thought. How many truths have vanished in boiling water? And how often have the hands that cleaned them chosen silence over revelation, not out of ignorance, but out of wisdom? Story 4. Bell pulls and whispers, communication below the stairs. In the hushed stillness of a Victorian townhouse, it is not voices that call the servants to action, it is bells. They chime softly behind closed doors, from hallways dimly lit with gaslight, their delicate rings trailing through the very walls of the house. But these are no ordinary bells. They are signals, commands, warnings, and they speak a language every servant must understand. You, a junior housemaid just weeks into your position, are learning to listen not with your ears alone, but with your whole body. Because in this house, communication is an invisible thread that binds every moment to every movement. And when a bell rings, you must already be on your way. The bell board. The bell board is mounted on the wall just outside the servants' hall. It is long and narrow, lined with a series of labeled indicators, each corresponding to a room above. Drawing room, breakfast room, master's study, nursery, bedrooms 1 through 6, the front door, the morning room, the library. Each bell is connected by a taut wire strung discreetly behind the walls and floors of the house, stretching all the way to a tiny pull cord or a wall-mounted lever upstairs. When a pull is activated, the wire gives a tug. The bell on the board rings once or twice, depending on the speed, and the corresponding flag swings into view. You learn early on that the sound is not the most important part. It's the type of ring. A short, sharp ding, the master's bedroom. A long, hesitant pull, likely the nursery children never pull with conviction. 2 quick rings in succession, the front door, immediate attention required. You are expected to memorize the tone of each and to respond without delay, without hesitation, and above all, without noise. A network of wires. The bell system is the house's nervous system. It stretches behind every wainscoting panel, up staircases, through floorboards and behind skirting boards. The footman once showed you the wires in the basement, a thick tangle near the ceiling, each marked with a faintly inked label. "Don't touch them," he warned, "and if one goes slack, tell the butler. You'll hear it before you see it." It's true, a slack wire creates a sluggish ring, a tired bell. It's enough to earn you a reprimand if it goes unnoticed. Sometimes, in the middle of your tasks, you hear a faint ting from the bell board and glance up. One bell, drawing room. You nod to the parlor maid and she's already halfway up the stairs. This, you realize, is how a grand house breathes, in quiet cues, in signals, in silence that hides the mechanism beneath. Learning the hierarchy. Not all bells carry equal weight. If the library bell rings during dinner service, it can wait. If the morning room rings just as the footmen are preparing trays, it may be ignored for a few minutes. But if the master's study bell sounds particularly in quick succession, everything stops. The hierarchy of bells mirrors the hierarchy of the house. The cook never responds to bells. Her work anchors the household at its core. The housekeeper prioritizes the mistress's calls. The butlers, especially the under-butler, handle the study, the dining room, and the wine cellar. You, as a junior maid, are given the light bells, bedrooms, stairwells, and the drawing room during quiet hours. Even your responsibilities are determined by the tone of a chime. When the bells compete, there are moments, busy ones, when two bells ring at once. The master's bedroom and the nursery, for instance, or the dining room and the front door. In such cases, the decision is immediate: seniority, urgency, and proximity. A housemaid rushing to the wrong bell first can cause confusion. Worse, it reveals a lack of discipline. You're trained to pause briefly before moving, to listen to the house like a conductor reads a score. And in time, your feet move before your thoughts do. Up the service stairs, down the back hallway, tray in hand, expression composed. You arrive, knock once, and enter without sound. Bells at night. The nighttime bells are the worst. There's no predicting when they'll ring. Sometimes the mistress forgets her book and pulls for a maid. Sometimes a guest needs a fire relit. Sometimes, rarely, the nursery bell sounds in a panic, sharp and sustained. You sleep lightly, never undressed past your shift, your hair loosely braided in case you must rise quickly. One night around midnight, a bell rings 3 times, not standard. You leap from bed, glance at the board, guest room 2. Odd, that room is unoccupied. You report it to the butler, who simply nods. "Faulty wire," he says. Still, the bell echoes in your thoughts for hours. You wonder who pulled it, or whether it pulled itself. The whispers behind the bells. While the bell board is formal, the other half of communication in the house is less structured. Servants whisper instructions, corrections, gossip. A nudge here, a tap there. You might receive a folded scrap of paper with a room number and time. You might pass someone on the stairs and see their eyebrows raised just so, warning you to avoid the second-floor hall. The bells command action, but the whispers carry meaning. And you, learning both languages, become fluent in service. When the bell does ring, more frightening than a sudden bell is the silence where one should be. The day the bell from the mistress's room fails to ring at the usual hour, a chill runs through the staff. The housekeeper checks the bedroom, no answer. The butler knocks. Finally, the maid is sent in with tea. The mistress is fine, merely sleeping late, but the disruption to routine is unsettling. The house depends on its rhythm. When a bell goes silent, the structure weakens. The servants talk of that morning for days. The day she didn't ring, they call it. You understand now, in this place every bell is a promise, its absence a threat. Repair and secrecy. The repair of bell wires is rare and dangerous, more to status than safety. When the drawing room bell stopped working, the master insisted it be repaired immediately. A carpenter arrived with a spool of copper wire and climbed into the walls. For 2 days he worked in silence, and for 2 days the drawing room was unused. The mistress complained of the disruption, but what bothered her more was the knowledge that a man unfamiliar and unvetted was moving unseen through the skeleton of her house. Because bell wires run through places no one sees, the hollow between walls, the floor under rugs, the eaves behind portraits. They are the nervous system, and they are always listening. Unresolved thought. What happens when a servant hears more than they're meant to, when the bells speak of something that should remain unspoken? And when the wires themselves seem to carry whispers, can silence ever truly mean safety? There's a rumor among the housemaids that the bell wires remember. Not in a magical sense, nothing as fanciful as ghosts or haunted fireplaces, but in the way a house absorbs memory. The scuffed step in the back stair, the worn groove in the pantry floor, the faint echo of a bell that hasn't been pulled in years. This week, however, the whispering isn't metaphorical. Something's wrong with the bell in the blue drawing room. A bell without a pull. It starts with a single, sharp ring at a strange hour. You glance up at the bell board. Blue drawing room, its flag swinging gently. You furrow your brow. That room is locked. It hasn't been used since spring, when a guest, an elderly cousin of the master, took ill and was moved to a quieter floor. Since then, it's been kept dark, its curtains drawn. Still, the bell rang. You report it to the butler, as trained. He raises an eyebrow. Nobody should be in there. The housekeeper is called, the key fetched, the room is opened. Dusty, untouched, silent. No sign of entry, no breeze, no movement. But the bell did ring. The wire is checked taut, undisturbed. The board reset. But something lingers in the air, like static. The housekeeper's record. Later, when things are quiet, you glance into the housekeeper's book of incidents. It's an old volume, leather-bound and well-thumbed. You aren't supposed to touch it, but it sits open that afternoon. In neat script. May 6, blue drawing room bell rang unexpectedly. Room found empty. Flag reset. August 19, blue drawing room bell rang again. No signs of entry. Possible wire fault. November 2, third incident. Inspection required. You notice the entries stretch back over 2 years. Always the same room. Always the same unexplained ringing. You close the book gently. Repairman and avoidance. The following week, a wire specialist is summoned from the city. He arrives with coiled wire, small tools, and a disinterested attitude. He examines the panel, frowns, and disappears behind the wall with a lantern. An hour later, he emerges pale-faced, wiping dust from his coat. "Nothing wrong," he mutters, then adds, "Strange pull tension on that one line, like it's been tugged slightly but from nowhere." The butler shrugs, "Could be age." The repairman says nothing more, packs up and leaves. He doesn't charge for his time. No one asks why. Whispers among staff. In the servants' hall, the whispers begin. "Wasn't that the room where the cousin fell ill? I heard they never found her ring. She was always pulling that bell, day and night. I heard she rang it right before she fainted." The scullery maid crosses herself. The footman smirks, "Old wires, that's all." But that night, you lie awake in your cot, listening to the pipes creak. And for the first time, you wonder if the house knows more than it lets on. Interception. A few days later, you're sent to clean the breakfast room. As you pass the bell board, you see something odd. 2 flags down, one for the master's study, the other the blue drawing room. You blink, the room is still locked. No one should be in either. The butler responds to the study. You take a risk and slip upstairs to the blue drawing room's door. Still locked. But the door is warm to the touch. You hesitate, then step away. You do not tell anyone. Messages by Bell. That evening, while folding towels in the laundry room, the undermaid tells you about a different house she worked in, one with a more elaborate bell system. They used it to send messages, she says. Not just calls for tea or water, proper messages. 3 rings for trouble. 1 ring, pause, 1 ring again meant don't come. You think about the blue drawing room. The way the bell rings at odd hours, not like a summoning. More like a signal. What the wire carries. You inspect the bell wires more closely the next morning, on the pretense of cleaning behind the board. You trace the blue drawing room's wire to the wall. It passes through a narrow conduit, one of several, leading behind the main stair. There in the dark, you find a split and unusual junction, a branching point where 2 wires meet then separate again. Odd, bell wires don't split like that. You say nothing, but you begin to count. Every time the bell rings, every time someone enters the master's study, every time the mistress walks past the drawing room without stopping. And the numbers line up. A language not meant for you. You begin to suspect what no one dares say. Someone is using the bell system. Not for summoning, not for routine, but for signaling. The blue drawing room's bell is not faulty. It's intentional. A silent conversation across the house, a message that bypasses voices, notes, footmen, a code. You don't know what it means, but you know someone else does. The housekeeper's silence. You bring it to the housekeeper delicately. There's something strange about the blue drawing room's wire, ma'am. She looks at you for a long time, then. There is no blue drawing room wire. You blink, but the bell. The bell is decorative. That room is no longer in use. That's all you need to know. She turns away. Conversation over. The decision. You're given a choice, unspoken but clear. Forget what you've seen, or ask more questions and find yourself replaced. And so you choose. You return to cleaning the board, to resetting flags, to listening without reacting. But now, when the blue drawing room bell rings, you do not look away. You listen. You learn the pattern. 1 long, 1 short, pause. Then 2 quick. You do not yet know what it means. But you will. Reflection and closing. In a Victorian house, words are too loud, letters too dangerous, but bells, they are subtle, acceptable, invisible. And within that network of wires lives an unspoken world. For those who serve, understanding that world can mean the difference between belonging and banishment, between silence and knowledge. Final thought. When systems of control become systems of communication, who truly owns the house, the masters, or those who hear its every secret? The bell rings again. Blue drawing room. No one moves. You glance at the board from across the corridor, cloth in hand, tray on hip. The flag sways gently, just as it has half a dozen times this week. Once it would have caused a stir, but now it's understood. Don't speak of it. Reset the flag if it lingers too long. Pretend it didn't happen. The sound of the bell has become part of the wallpaper, present, persistent, but officially unacknowledged. Still, you hear it, and you're not pretending. The bell's routine. The pattern continues over the coming days. Always the same times: late morning, mid-afternoon, just after dusk. 3 intervals. Never when guests are present. Never when the house is entirely empty. Always subtle. You begin tracking it. You notice that shortly after each ring, the butler emerges from the master's study, sometimes with papers, sometimes empty-handed, once with a leather satchel. The mistress never seems to notice. But you do. Unraveling the code. You're not educated in codes, not formally, but service teaches you patterns, the rhythm of footsteps, the order of requests, the texture of silence when something is wrong. The blue drawing room bell rings. One short ring. A pause. One long ring. Then two quick. Each variation is deliberate. You're sure of it now. It's a conversation, not just a call. The study bell never rings independently anymore, it responds. You begin writing the sequences down, quietly, in a corner of your apron hem in thread. The other staff think it embroidery. It's not. The purpose beneath the dust. The blue drawing room remains locked. But one morning you arrive early. The house is still asleep, gas lamps not yet lit. You pass the drawing room and stop. The door is ajar, just slightly enough to see that it's not empty. The dust is still there, yes, but not untouched. A single chair has been moved slightly from the fireplace. A small table bears the marks of an object recently placed and removed, a circular ring, a faint smudge. And then there's the wire. Not behind the wall, but beside the mantel, neatly disguised along the molding. A secondary pull. A bell within a bell. Someone has created a private channel. The butler's involvement. You no longer believe the butler is just resetting the bell. Once you follow him quietly, barefoot on the back stair. You watch him disappear into the study after the blue drawing room bell rings, carrying a folded paper. He doesn't re-emerge for 20 minutes. When he does, he locks the door behind him. Your heart pounds. He glances over his shoulder, but you're gone before he sees you. An accident or a warning. 3 nights later, the underfootman trips on the front stair and breaks an oil lamp. The mistress is furious. But not for the lamp. For what was revealed. A second wire tacked clumsily under the stair tread, emerging from the baseboard and veering toward the back hall. It's not part of the original system. And suddenly, whispers start again. There's a second bell board. Hidden maybe. In the butler's pantry. Or the wine cellar. The wire vanishes into a part of the house. No servants are allowed. And from then on, the blue drawing room bell stops ringing. Silence as strategy. The sudden silence is louder than the bell ever was. It lasts a full week. No chimes, no flags, no strange signals. The routine of the house continues. The master remains aloof, the mistress tense, the servants careful. But the feeling remains, something is still moving beneath the floors. And one morning, the bell rings again. Not the blue drawing room. The front door. A messenger arrives, hands the butler a sealed envelope. The flag on the blue drawing room flips up seconds later. This time, the housekeeper responds, not with a reprimand but with quiet cooperation. The message is passed, the flag reset. Nothing said aloud. But everything is clear. When a house becomes a conspiracy, you've seen enough to understand. The bells are not only for service, they're for discretion, for negotiation, perhaps even for protection. In a society built on rigid rules of class behavior, silence, a private bell system, is the perfect tool. No one suspects it, no one records it, no one hears it unless they know how to listen. It's how secrets are kept or passed. And now you're part of it whether you like it or not. An offer. One day, as you deliver fresh linens to the butler's pantry, he stops you. You're quick, he says, and quiet. You nod. There may be extra duties, a bit of light carrying, documents occasionally just between rooms, no questions. You understand immediately. It's not about the weight of what you carry, but what it means. You agree. Not because you crave intrigue, but because you understand how houses work. Those who serve quietly survive. Those who listen carefully rise. Reflection and closing. The bell pulls in a Victorian house are more than metal and wire. They are threads in a greater tapestry of control, routine, and power. But sometimes, those same tools are turned sideways. They become tools of resistance, or privacy, or quiet rebellion. You thought you were here to dust, polish, and answer calls. But now you know the house speaks in bells, and you've learned to speak back. Final thought. When communication is hidden in plain sound, how many truths are carried along copper wires, never written down, never spoken aloud, but always heard by someone who understands? Story 5. The scullery maid's burden: grease, scrubbing, and invisible labor. Before the breakfast trays are arranged, before the kettles sing, before the first bell rings, you are already awake. The scullery maid always is. You do not sleep in a feather bed, nor do you enjoy even the small dignity of a cot in the attic. Your space is beneath the main stairwell, near the warmth of the kitchen range. It smells always of fat, smoke, and damp cloth. You are the lowest-ranking servant in a very large house, and this house depends on you. No one says it aloud, but without your labor the whole system crumbles. A job defined by dirty water. The scullery maid's domain is the kitchen, and more precisely, the dark, wet edges of it. Your days are filled with grease, steam, water, and waste. You scrub the pots. You clean the floors. You wash the dishes no one else will touch. When the cook barks orders, it's usually at you. When the housekeeper says kitchen is looking better, it's your back that aches. When guests smile at their perfectly arranged meals, you're in the scullery scraping suet off the range and trying not to gag on boiled cabbage water. You are 15, perhaps 16. You may not even know your true age, but you do know the scullery. You know it like the inside of your own hands, red, cracked, and calloused from lye soap and scalding water. The day begins in cold silence. You rise before the others. Even the kitchen maid, who fancies herself superior, remains abed as you grope for your apron in the dark. You light the hearth with kindling you chopped the night before. If the fire doesn't catch, the entire kitchen routine falls behind, and if it does, it's your fault. You boil the first water, haul coal from the scuttle, sweep the hearthstones, clean yesterday's ash from the stove before the cook comes down and inspects. You move quickly. You cannot afford to be seen working, only the results should be visible. The never-ending dishes. After breakfast is served, the real work begins. A stack of pans taller than you looms in the scullery sink: iron, copper, pewter, and tin, all in various states of ruin. You scrape them, soak them, and scrub with crushed brick and vinegar. Your hands are blistered, your sleeves damp by dawn. Knives must be cleaned and dried before the butler notices a spot of rust. The cook's prized copper saucepans must be buffed until you can see your nose in them. Serving platters go to the parlor maid, but only after you've cleaned them to an invisible standard. Every item passes through your hands. None bear your name. The scullery's geography. Your world is small: a stone floor, a narrow sink, a rusting water pump. You keep your supplies in old wooden crates, coarse soap, scouring rags, and worn brushes. There is no window. Only a vent, high and greasy, where steam escapes in thick curls. You breathe that steam in. It warms you in winter and stifles you in summer. To the family, your world doesn't exist. To the housekeeper, it exists only when it fails. Once you missed a pan beneath the stove. The cook found it blackened the next morning. You lost your half-day off that week. No explanation, no leniency. That is the way of the scullery. The waste of the house. You are also responsible for refuse. Scraps from breakfast, bones from the roast, wilted salad greens, all are yours to sort. Some go to the pig bin, others to the compost heap. Still more are boiled into stocks and soups that will never grace the master's table but feed the servants. Your apron smells always of fat and iron. Even when you scrub it clean with boiling water, the scent remains. You've begun to think it's part of you now. The laundry maid once joked she could always tell a scullery girl by her shadow. You did not laugh. The hidden clockwork. You do not wear a watch. You do not own a clock. But you know time by tasks. If the second tray hasn't gone up, it's nearly 9:00. If the cook opens the spice drawer, it's past noon. If the bell rings twice from the drawing room, it's time to set out the tea trays. If the back stair grows cold again, it's after midnight. Time in service is measured by duty, not hours. You do not count the hours, there are too many. The status you do not have. Among servants, you are at the bottom. The footman calls you girl. The kitchen maid pretends you aren't there. The cook refers to you by your task, not your name. Pan, floor, water. You eat last, if there are crumbs left. You sleep closest to the stove. You do not attend church with the others, there is too much to be done. But you listen. You learn. You hear the housekeeper's murmured complaints, the butler's quiet cough that worsens when the weather turns, the way the kitchen maid sighs when no one is watching. You know this house better than anyone. And still, you remain invisible. The one kindness. The only person who ever speaks to you kindly is the undergardener. He brings you potatoes that are just bruised, not spoiled. Sometimes, if no one is watching, he gives you a piece of apple or a heel of bread tucked into his coat. You never thank him aloud, but you wash his boots better than anyone's. Sometimes, kindness is scrubbing off the muck without a word. The end of the day. By nightfall, your arms shake with fatigue. The scullery must be spotless before you sleep. Pots hung, knives aligned, sink scrubbed, stove swept, towels wrung and left to dry. If anything is out of place, the cook will see it at 5:00 the next morning. And it will be your failure. You light your own tiny candle and curl up near the still warm side of the range. You pull your damp apron over you like a blanket. You dream not of freedom, you dream of dry hands, of hot porridge, of someone saying your name with recognition. Unresolved thought. What happens when even the invisible reach a breaking point? In a house built on silence and labor, what does it look like when the bottom tier finally pushes back? The morning begins like all the others. You rise in the dark, your fingers numb with cold. You boil water for the day's first wash, stoke the fire and sweep yesterday's soot. The kitchen still sleeps. The air is heavy and quiet. But something feels different. The range won't light properly. The coal is damp. You kneel beside it, coaxing flame from ember, your breath visible in the frosty air. Behind you, the door creaks. The cook enters early. Slow again, she snaps. You don't answer. You don't need to. You know the rule. Speak only when spoken to, and even then, choose your words carefully. The boiling point. Breakfast is rushed. The butler is late. A guest has arrived unannounced. The master is in a mood. And the new kitchen maid, a well-connected girl from a slightly better house, burns the scones. The cook blames you. You should have reminded her to lower the heat. You didn't even know she was using the oven. Still, the reprimand lands on you, not her. Your punishment, no morning bread, just cold tea already tannic. You return to the scullery. You scrub harder. The sponge tears. You keep going. A task too far. Just before luncheon, you are handed a pile of roasting pans still hot, the fat not yet congealed. You're told to clean them before the next course. You try, but your fingers are still raw from yesterday's lie. The water is too hot. The steam hits your face like slap. The pan slips. Crashes. A sharp metallic echo rings through the kitchen. The cook turns sharply. Everyone stares. The pan is dented. Not ruined, but visibly damaged. The cook storms over, her voice calm but furious. You've no respect for what's given to you. She tells you to stay behind that evening. You will clean every copper lid, every pot, every tray twice. And if there's still time, the kitchen floor. The snap. You nod silently, but something inside you shifts. It's not rage, it's not sadness. It's hollowness, a kind of tired that has no name. You return to your place. You wash, you scrub, you dry. And later, when the kitchen empties, you remain alone in the warmth of the dying range, surrounded by copper. A visitor in the scullery. Hours pass. Then softly a knock. The undergardener appears in the doorway. He holds something wrapped in cloth, a heel of brown bread and half a cold boiled potato. He sets it down beside the stove. "I heard," he says. No elaboration, just those words. He doesn't wait for thanks, just nods and leaves. You eat slowly, chewing each bite carefully. You're not even hungry, but it's not about the food. It's about being seen. A small rebellion. The next morning, you arrive a few minutes late. No one notices. The cook is shouting at the kitchen maid. The butler is arguing with the footman about tea trays. The mistress is dissatisfied with the flower arrangements again. You start your work in silence. But when the cook demands the copper lids be repolished, before tea, despite their gleam, you pause. You stare at her, not long, not boldly. Just enough. Then slowly you pick up the dullest lid and begin, but only that one. A single, silent rebellion. She says nothing. A talk with the housekeeper. Later that day, the housekeeper asks to see you. You panic at first, certain you'll be dismissed. But she only says, "There's talk of you moving to laundry." It's not a promotion exactly, but it's drier work, cleaner, warmer, less direct abuse. You nod. She closes her book. You're not the first to burn out. The scullery doesn't keep people for long. You did better than most. She doesn't say, "Well done." But she doesn't say you failed, either. That's enough. The last night in the scullery. That night, you sit beside the stove longer than usual. You place your hands on the old brick. Let its warmth soak into your skin. You stare at the blackened walls, the cracked soap dish, the battered kettle that squeals when it boils. You think of all the things this room has taken from you and all it taught you. Resilience, endurance, the power of silence. And you realize something strange. You don't hate it. You survived it. And in this house, that's a kind of triumph. Reflection and closing. The scullery maid is not just the lowest servant, she is the one who carries the weight of the house's filth, unseen and unpraised. Yet within that burden is a kind of power, the power to endure, to watch, to learn, to persist when everything is stacked against you. Your name may never be written in the house ledger, but your hands have shaped every pot, every plate, every corner of that kitchen. And now you rise not with ceremony, but with quiet strength. Because even the lowest step leads upward. Final thought. What happens when the most invisible worker begins to recognize their worth not in praise, but in survival? In a world that relies on their silence, what power lies in simply refusing to disappear? You do not expect anyone to say goodbye. The morning you leave the scullery for the last time, the kitchen is already humming. The cook is issuing orders, the kitchen maid rushing to assemble the soup course. Pans clatter, ovens roar, the bell from the breakfast room rings once, twice. No one pauses. You tie your apron, roll up your sleeves, and finish your final task, emptying the ashes from the stove. It's not ceremonial, it's just work. But you breathe differently now, because you know you won't be coming back. Into the laundry. The laundry room isn't far, but it feels like another world. It's brighter for one. There's a small window high on the wall which lets in an hour or two of pale daylight. You hear birds again, and while the work is hard, it's drier, more rhythmic. Boiling, rinsing, mangling, starching. Your fingers are still raw, but not from lye. Here, at least, water has a scent of soap, not rot. A quiet promotion. The housekeeper calls it a lateral move, but it feels like a promotion. You're still a maid, still a servant, still at the mercy of the bell. But now you eat at the long table in the servants' hall, not crouched in the scullery between tasks. You're allowed half a day off every other Sunday. You have a place in the laundry log. And perhaps most importantly, you are no longer invisible. The laundry maid teaches you how to fold napkins into perfect squares, how to boil linens without yellowing them, how to starch collars so they hold like iron. You learn fast. You always have. The visit. A week later, you return to the kitchen to deliver clean linens. The cook glances up. Her face is unreadable. "The pots are cleaner lately," she says to no one in particular. "Not like before." You're not sure if it's a jab or a compliment. You say nothing. But you notice the floor has gone unwashed. The corners gather crumbs. The kitchen maid's apron is stained. Without you, the scullery has begun to slide. You feel no joy in that, just a strange, quiet knowing. They needed you more than they admitted. A new kind of routine. The laundry is not easy work. You rise early. You work long hours. You scrub and boil and press until your shoulders ache. But it's manageable. Predictable. You learn to anticipate stains, wine, ink, soot. You learn to remove them without damaging the fabric. You become trusted. The housekeeper sends you delicate items now. The mistress's lace, the master's gloves. You hold them carefully, like they might bruise. But you no longer fear them. Remembering the scullery. You still dream of the scullery sometimes. Of the shape of the old stove, the damp smell, the weight of the mop, the crash of pans. You remember the ache in your hands, the hopelessness, but also the stubbornness. You carried the weight of the household on your back, and no one noticed until you were gone. Now in the warmth of the laundry, that strength remains with you. It's in the way you lift a copper boiler without spilling a drop, the way you fold a sheet so flat it feels like paper. You brought that from the scullery, and it will carry you further still. Unexpected praise. Late one evening, as you're finishing a set of shirts, the butler steps in. He says nothing for a moment, then lays a handkerchief on the folding table. "Bit of a stain," he says. "Ink. Master's done it again." You nod and reach for a brush. He lingers a moment. "You've done well," he says almost reluctantly. Then he leaves. It's not much. But from the butler, it's everything. The new girl. A month later, a new scullery maid arrives. She's younger than you were. From the countryside, nervous, eyes wide. She trips over the coal scuttle her first morning. The cook berates her. The kitchen maid rolls her eyes. You see her later, scrubbing a pan that will never come clean. You leave a bar of better soap by the sink. She never sees you do it. But the next day, the pan gleams a little brighter. You say nothing. But you remember. Reflection and closing. To be a scullery maid in a Victorian household is to endure the deepest drudgery, to scrub in silence, to work in wet darkness, to carry the burdens others will never see. But there is a kind of strength in that. Because from the bottom, you learn every corner of the house, every crack in the system, every moment that depends on your unseen labor. And when you rise, because you will rise, you do so with knowledge that cannot be taught. It is earned. With every burn, every brushstroke, every pan. Final thought. When the lowest servant steps forward, not with noise, but with steadiness, how does the house change in ways no bell can announce? Story 6. The Rise and Fall of the Boot Boy. If you are the boot boy, you are almost certainly a child. Too old to be in the nursery, too poor to be apprenticed, and too small to serve at table. You occupy the lowest rung of service in a Victorian household, below the footman, below the stable boy, even below the scullery maid. You are not entrusted with fire. You are not taught to polish silver, but you are given one sacred task: the boots. All of them. Before sunrise, before names. You sleep in a cupboard, perhaps not literally but close enough. Your room is a small, airless space near the cellar steps, just wide enough for a cot and a shelf. It always smells of polish and damp wool. Your coat never dries completely. Your hands are always cracked. You wake before everyone else, not because you're told to, but because you fear what happens if you don't. The men of the house, master, guests, butler, footmen, all expect their boots to be cleaned, dried, and placed just so by the back stairs before breakfast. You cannot be late. You cannot miss a pair. You cannot mix them up. Once you did. You learned your lesson quickly. A job measured in soles. You handle black leather boots, brown riding boots, indoor shoes, spats, galoshes, and boots with soles so thick they stand up on their own. Each pair has its own expectations. The master's boots must shine like mirrors. The butler's must be formal, correct, and polished with a cloth bearing no trace of lint. The footmen wear livery boots that must be buffed daily, even if they never step outside. You clean them all in the tiny boot room, crouched over a crate lit by a guttering oil lamp. Your tools. A box of brushes, coarse, fine finishing. A lump of beeswax polish. A soft cloth from a torn linen shirt. A tin of blacking that stains your nails permanently. The leather doesn't forgive mistakes. And neither does the house. The unseen work. When guests arrive unexpectedly, their boots are handed to you without names. You must guess which belong to whom, polish accordingly, and return them without question. If you scuff the toe of a guest's shoe, the footman hears about it. And if the footman hears about it, you do too. You once spent a morning scrubbing dried mud from a riding boot only to be told it was supposed to remain authentically weathered, a deliberate affectation of the gentleman owner. No one explains this. You are expected to know. Mud, blood, and mystery. Not all stains are innocent. Sometimes a pair arrives with a dark red smear not fresh enough to smell, but unmistakable. Other times, the heel bears a crack, or the toe shows wear inconsistent with walking. You learn not to ask questions. You clean them. You patch the damage if needed. You dry them carefully and return them silently. Boots tell stories, but no one wants to hear them from you. The climb to somewhere. You do more than boots. Eventually, once the footman trusts you, you're given extra duties, emptying the ash bins, delivering messages between floors, running errands to the grocer. You aren't supposed to speak to anyone outside the household, but they do speak to you. You from the Barrington place. That's a fine house. Do they feed you well? Still polishing boots, are you? You nod, you keep walking, but sometimes you think, maybe one day you won't be. You've seen the footmen rise. Even the under-butler started somewhere. A moment of almost pride. One morning, the master himself comments on your work. "These boots'll do," he mutters to the butler. Finally, someone knows how to shine a heel. He doesn't look at you, but your chest warms. Later that week, the butler passes you a slightly worn waistcoat. Clean yourself up before errands. You'll represent the house. You nod, you try not to smile too much. It's not a promotion, but it's something. The rivalry. Then the new boy arrives. His name is Thomas. He's younger than you but comes with a letter from the vicar. The butler takes to him quickly. At first, you show him the ropes, how to handle polish, how to dry boots without cracking the leather. He learns fast. Too fast. Within a week, the butler assigns him the delivery to the tailor, a privilege. Your return to the boot room. "Too many scuffs lately," says the butler without meeting your eyes. You bite your tongue. You polish harder. But the blacking tin feels heavier than it used to. The misstep. It happens one Thursday. You're told to polish the master's riding boots fast. He plans to leave for a meeting by 10. You rush, you cut corners, you miss a spot on the heel. He notices. By noon, the butler is at your door. Back to kitchen duties, he says. Let Thomas handle the boots. You don't argue. You return to scrubbing the scullery floor, to hauling coal, to anonymity. The shine you once brought to the house now dulls quietly beneath the stove. Unresolved thought. What becomes of a servant boy who learns to read the language of boots but is never permitted to speak his own? In a house where worth is measured in silence and shine, can he ever rise again? The boot room is no longer yours. The brushes you once arranged in neat rows are now crooked. The polish you melted over low heat is cold and clotted. The cloths hang limp and stained, knotted without care. The shelf where you kept your best rag is dusty. You pass by the room each morning on your way to the coal cellar. Thomas, the new boy, barely looks up. He is singing as he buffs a pair of the master's dress shoes. There's a bit of wax on his cheek, and his hair is slicked back with too much soap. He doesn't know yet how cold the cellar gets. You do. From leather to coal. Your days are longer now. No more quiet, focused hours in the boot room. Now you haul coal black, crumbling, heavy, and stack it neatly beside the range. You empty chamber pots when the hall boy is ill. You sweep ashes from grates, carry linens to the laundry, and rinse out pails of waste from the kitchen. Your hands no longer smell of polish. Now they smell of soot. The quiet loss. No one said it aloud, but the demotion cut deep. There is no pay difference, no title to lose, but you feel it all the same. You learned the boots, learned them like a language, which pair needed beeswax, which took better to cloth than brush. You could judge a man's gait by the wear on his sole. Now your world is mud and mess. You try not to dwell on it. But sometimes, at night, you imagine the feel of leather beneath your fingers again, the smooth rhythm of polish and cloth, the gleam that made something common feel important. A boot out of place. One afternoon, you're delivering coal to the main hall when you spot something strange. A boot, just one, sits near the edge of the coat stand. Not where boots are usually kept, not part of a pair. It's the master's left riding boot, the one you used to shine every Thursday morning. It is dull, the heel scuffed. Forgotten. You hesitate. Then, without thinking, you pick it up and carry it to the boot room. Thomas is out, likely on an errand. You sit, the stool feels smaller than it used to. You reach for the blacking tin. It's not yours anymore, but you know exactly where it is. You begin to polish. A forgotten craft. The rhythm returns immediately. Rub, buff, shine, edge of the heel inside of the arch, curve of the instep. You finish the boot in silence. It gleams. You set it on the shelf. No one saw you. But for a moment, you feel yourself again, not the coal boy, not the forgotten lad in the cellar, but someone who was trusted with detail. An unexpected request. The next morning, the butler calls you aside. His expression is unreadable. He holds the riding boots, both now polished. Did you touch these? You hesitate, a beat too long. He nods as if that were answer enough. Then, without further comment, he hands you a wrapped parcel. Deliver this to the station master immediately and bring it straight back. No delays. A station delivery. That's a task usually given to a more trusted servant. You nod, yes, sir. Your heart pounds not because of the task, but because of what it means. A crack in the wall. The coal dust doesn't wash off. You run the errand perfectly. On time, package intact, no missteps. You think maybe it's a sign you're being noticed again. Perhaps another shot at the boot room. Perhaps a return to quiet dignity. But the next morning, Thomas is back in place. He's botched a pair of galoshes, used the wrong brush. The polish is streaked in gray. The butler is not pleased. He sends Thomas out to sweep the front step. An icy wind howls through the hall. The boots sit unpolished on the shelf. No one says anything. You don't move. You've learned the rules. The boy in the livery. Later that week, you're asked to assist the junior footman carrying trays to the morning room. You've never worn livery before. The jacket hangs loose on your shoulders, the trousers too long, but you do not complain. You balance the tray, you step lightly. You remember to knock once, then twice. You do not speak unless spoken to. When the door closes behind you, the junior footman whispers, "Not bad." It's not praise, but it's not criticism either. You return the tray, hang up the livery, and go back to cold duty. But a door has opened, just a crack. Between two worlds. You exist now in between. No longer just a boot boy, not quite a hall boy, not yet a footman. You polish when needed. You carry coal when told. You run messages with no complaint. And slowly, the household begins to see you again, not as a boy to shout at, but as someone who knows how to listen, how to anticipate, how to survive. The scullery maid nods at you now. The cook calls you by name. The boots still call to you sometimes. Late at night, you dream of brushing them again. Not for duty, but for memory. Unresolved thought. What happens to the servant who never fully rises, but never quite fades? Is there dignity in becoming part of the house's rhythm, even if your name is never spoken upstairs? The house never officially gives you your title back. There's no announcement, no key to the boot room, no mention of what you once lost. But slowly, quietly, you return. Not to the same place, not with the same eager hands or foolish pride. You return with calluses, with caution, and with the silent knowledge that being noticed is a luxury, but being needed is survival. A shift in routine. It starts with a small request. The butler gestures toward the boots left by the rear entrance. They're not dry, sort them. Then a few days later, those shoes the guests polish them before supper. Then finally, the master wants the riding boots shined before Sunday. The words are clipped, the tone neutral, but the meaning is clear. You're trusted again. Not reinstated, not elevated, but trusted. And in a house like this, that's more precious than promotion. The boy who came after. Thomas is no longer the boot boy. After too many mistakes and one unfortunate incident involving ink and a pair of patent leather slippers, he's reassigned to help the stable hand. He doesn't complain. He disappears most of the day now and returns smelling of hay. Sometimes he nods at you in the passage. Sometimes he doesn't. You don't feel triumphant. You just feel older. Learning the house by footwear. You begin to know the house by what walks across its floors. The master's boots clean, narrow, made for packing and pointing. The butler's quiet, measured, polished, but never flashy. The guest's clumsy, overshined, unfamiliar with where to tread. You can tell the mood of a household by the state of its boots. Scuffed heels mean stress. Unclean soles mean neglect. A sudden request for blacking polish late in the evening. That means a visit to someone else's home, unplanned, possibly urgent. In time, you understand the pulse of the house without a single bell ringing. You are no longer a boy shining boots. You are a reader of them. The gift of a rag. One day, the under-butler who rarely speaks more than is needed stops beside you while you're buffing a set of ankle boots. He sets a new cloth beside your tray. Lamb's wool, he says, better for the master's formal shoes. You look up startled. He doesn't wait for thanks. But he noticed. The rag is soft, the kind you saw once in a gentleman's outfitter's shop window, far beyond your pay. It works like a dream. The boots gleam, but you still polish as if you have everything to prove. Because you do. Reaching the hall. A month later, the butler sends for you. You assume it's for another errand. Instead, he points to the junior footman's tray, silver, polished, trembling slightly from steam. You'll carry this to the dining room, he says. Steady hands, quiet steps. Your fingers tingle. You nod. You do as asked. You pass the mistress in the hallway. She doesn't see you. But a guest glances over and says nothing about the tray. Which means you did it perfectly. On being spoken to. That night, while clearing away plates, the master's voice breaks through the clinking of silver. Boy. You freeze. Yes, sir. Your boots are always correct. You blink. Thank you, sir. It's nothing and everything. He doesn't know your name, but he knows your work. You carry the compliment like a hidden coin. A letter never sent. You begin writing a letter to your sister in the countryside. You describe the boots, the way the floor in the drawing room tilts slightly to the right, the butter served in silver trays, the bells, the steps, the small acts of recognition. But you never finish the letter. What is there to say, really? You're still a servant. But now you're more than a shadow. And that feels worth holding onto, even without words. A life measured differently. You no longer measure your worth in how brightly the boots shine. You measure it in how many pairs are left out for you without instruction. In who calls you boy versus who says lad. In how the footmen leave room for you at the end of the bench now. In the way the cook offers you a spare roll without a word after service. You are not celebrated, but you are no longer dismissed. A thought at the window. One afternoon, as you're oiling a pair of field boots, you glance out the boot room's high, grimy window. Outside, a man walks past a chimney sweep, soot still clinging to his skin. Behind him, two children carry a ladder. One trips slightly, but no one stops. You remember being like that. Running behind the world, trying not to fall too far behind. You look down at the boots, gleaming, lined up like soldiers, ready. You've come far, not far enough to be safe, but far enough to stay. And that, in service, is more than most ever get. Reflection and closing. To be the boot boy is to begin at the very bottom with mud under your fingernails and no name on the roster. But in every act of polish, there is dignity. In every pair of soles made ready for another stride, there is skill. You may never rise to the front hall or wear a coat with brass buttons, but you know the house, its pace, its people, its silences better than most. And in time, even the quietest servant leaves a mark, even if it's only on leather. Final thought. When the world sees only a boy kneeling over a pair of boots, what might he see in return about the people who wear them, and the power of being the one who prepares their steps? Story 7. The cook's domain, commanding the fires of a Victorian reign. If the master runs the house, and the butler maintains its order, then the cook rules its stomach. You may not see her when you visit the grand drawing room. She does not wear a uniform with brass buttons, nor does she glide silently across polished floors, but she commands flames and menus and fear. She is the cook, and below the stairs she is queen. Entering her domain, her world smells of roasted bone, flour, sweat, and smoke. The heat from the range wraps itself around you like a second skin, never quite comfortable, always vaguely oppressive. Her apron is worn, her hair tied tightly back, her sleeves rolled high. The copper pots hang in a precise order. The knives glint on the wall. Every spice jar is labeled in her own fatting handwriting. The kitchen clock is 5 minutes fast because she says it must be. When she speaks, the others listen. The kitchen maid jumps at her frown. The scullery maid trembles at her sigh. The footman delivers trays without comment, aware that a mistake in timing will be met not with polite correction, but with an eruption of fury. Because timing is everything. The morning symphony. She begins before the bells. At 5, the range is lit. At 6, the first batch of bread is rising. At 7, the porridge is simmering. The milk is boiled, the eggs inspected, the bacon sliced to a precise width. You might think she works alone, but no. She is the conductor of a small, sweating orchestra, a handful of girls and boys, all tasked with preparation. She supervises them with relentless attention. That's too much nutmeg. You've beaten that custard half to death. Start again. They groan, but they obey. Because the cook's wrath is swift, and because in truth they admire her. She who knows the family. The cook knows more about the family than most would guess. She knows which day of the week the master prefers kippers, which guest cannot tolerate onions, which footman sneaks leftover tarts when he thinks no one is looking. She sees everything. She hears things too. She knows when there's been a quarrel upstairs by the tray that comes back untouched. She knows when a lady is unwell by the broth requested. She can tell if a marriage is faltering by the wine consumption. A good cook knows ingredients. A great cook reads the household. A life of exactness. Nothing is guessed, everything is measured. A teaspoon of salt, a half-pound of dripping, 3 hours at a low heat. The open flame of the Victorian range is not consistent. It must be tended, coaxed, and managed like a living thing. There is no temperature dial, no convenience. Roasts must be basted by hand, turned with precision, monitored constantly. Bread must be rotated mid-bake to account for the cooler back corners of the oven. Soufflés risk collapse if the door is opened too soon. The cook trusts no one to do this but herself. The range is hers, temperamental, dangerous, sacred. Her weapons and tools. She does not own fine things, but what she does own she guards fiercely. Her rolling pin is worn smooth, the handles dark from decades of grip. Her knives are not the best in the house, but they are sharp and only she sharpens them. Her spoon, yes, her spoon is heavy, dented, and perfectly balanced. She once struck a footman with it when he dropped a custard. No one has touched it since. Rising from below. She was not always a cook. She was once a kitchen maid. Before that, a scullery maid. Before that, a farmer's daughter who boiled potatoes in a shared iron pot over a hearth that smoked terribly in the winter. She learned everything through observation. She memorized every instruction, practiced at night in silence, took over when the old cook took ill, impressed the housekeeper, earned the title. No formal training, no fancy school, just endless repetition, grit, and hunger. She will not go back. The power in her hands. Others forget how fragile the illusion of order is. But not the cook. She knows that the grand dinner party that impresses the mayor, the Sunday supper that soothes a visiting aunt, the wedding banquet that dazzles distant relations, all of it depends on her timing, her recipes, her judgment. One mistake and the illusion shatters. She holds that power carefully. Not with joy, not with tyranny, but with a seriousness born of knowing that no one thanks the cook until the soup is ruined. The solitude. Her authority is complete in the kitchen, but she is still a servant. She does not dine upstairs. She does not visit the drawing room. She does not speak her mind beyond the scullery wall. She receives praise only through silence. No complaints. Then the food was good, a clean plate, a job done well. She has learned to find satisfaction in the absence of criticism. But sometimes when the house is quiet and the pans are clean, she thinks of her mother's kitchen, where she stirred stew without fear, and wonders if power is worth the distance it creates. Unresolved thought. How long can a woman wield authority in a world that only recognizes power when it's cloaked in a man's title? And what does it cost to be respected but never seen? The menu is not her choice. It is decided by the master's tastes, the mistress's whims, the guest's requirements, and the season's limitations. But it is the cook who makes it happen. 7 courses on a budget. A roast for 20 on half a sack of potatoes. Plum pudding without plums when the shipment does arrive. These are not failures, they are puzzles. And she solves them all. Timing is tyranny. The bells ring all day. Breakfast at 8 sharp, luncheon at 1, tea by 4, supper served precisely at 7. Each course is timed to perfection. The plates must be warm but not scalding. The soup must be poured without delay. The meat must rest exactly the right number of minutes, not too soon, not too late. In a kitchen ruled by a coal-burning range and hands instead of thermometers, precision is not a luxury, it is a religion. To cook well in this world is not just to understand food. It is to understand pressure. When the orders conflict, the mistress prefers white sauces. The master detests them. The daughter has recently declared herself against veal. The son is courting a girl who insists on French cookery, but complains when it's too rich. The housekeeper wants less waste. The butler wants larger portions. The scullery maid burns the soup stock. Through it all, the cook must smile, no, not smile. She must maintain a steady frown of concentration, a look of quiet, capable displeasure. Too little emotion and she appears dull. Too much and she is scolded for impertinence. She navigates these tensions like a ship's captain through fog. Guests from the city. They arrive unannounced, as guests often do. 3 ladies, 2 gentlemen, and a dog, all expecting full service. No notice is given. The footman mentions it while passing through the kitchen with a tray of cider glasses. 5 more at supper, he says offhandedly. The cook does not flinch. She nods, calculates silently, and begins. More pastry must be rolled. The soup must be stretched with a little extra stock. A second pudding is needed, but time is short. She assigns tasks with curt precision. By the time the guests sit down to dine, the courses arrive with seamless regularity. They complement the house's hospitality. No one mentions the cook. A battle with the rain. The range is ancient. It groans when too hot, smokes when too cold, the flue sticks, the oven door squeaks, the ash pan is too small. It is temperamental, finicky, and stubborn, just like her. On winter mornings, she battles the damp to coax the cold to catch. On summer afternoons, she wipes sweat from her brow as the entire kitchen becomes a furnace. She's been burned, scalded, and nearly choked by smoke, but she keeps it going. Because without the range, the house starves. And no one wants to see what happens when the house starves. The footman's apology. One day, a footman new to the household returns a tray to the kitchen and says aloud, "They said the soufflé was good, probably luck." The room falls silent. The cook turns. She says nothing, just stares. He blushes, mumbles, and leaves. The next day, he brings the tray back differently, places it carefully, bows slightly. "Madam," they praise the sauce. She nods once, and the kitchen breathes again. Respect is not demanded. It is earned, then enforced with silence. A marriage in the drawing room. Preparations begin for a wedding, one of the daughters of the house. The kitchen is to supply everything. The sweets, the roast, the late-night pies, the cakes, the elaborate puddings. It is the largest order the cook has ever handled. She plans it like a general at war, charts menus, checks stock, sends the scullery maid to fetch more eggs from the neighboring farm, prepares extra sauces in case of spill, coordinates every plate. On the day the bride weeps over her veil, the groom faints from nerves, and the guests clap politely. But no course is delayed. No dish arrives lukewarm. No one falls ill. It is by all counts a triumph. Later that night, the celebration over, the guests gone, the household asleep, the cook sits by the dying warmth of the range. Her apron is stiff with flour. Her hands ache from kneading. A bit of lemon peel clings to her sleeve. No one said thank you, but she does not expect it. Instead, she pours herself a half mug of sherry from the kitchen stock and sips slowly. Not in celebration, in quiet victory, reflection and closing. To feed a Victorian household is to shoulder an invisible weight one carried on grease-stained aprons and scorched fingers. The cook is expected to be silent, resourceful, unflinching. She is given a hot box of chaos and told to make grace. And she does, day after day, with no applause, no spotlight. Only the satisfaction of knowing that if she vanished, the whole house would starve slowly, then all at once. Final thought. When the heart of a house beats in the kitchen, why is the woman who keeps it alive always expected to do so in silence? There comes a day when even the fire begins to betray her. The range smokes too much. The grates don't draw as they once did. The oven's heat flickers no matter how much coal she feeds it. The scullery maid complains about the soot gathering in corners. The kitchen maid whispers that the cook has grown slow. But it is not slowness, it is age. And a lifetime of lifting cast iron pots, standing on hard flagstone floors and commanding kitchens from dawn to midnight takes its toll. Her back aches now. Her fingers burn slower. The stairs to the root cellar seem longer each time. Still she shows up every morning. Because a cook does not stop, she is the fire. Rumors from above. The house is changing. There are whispers about modernizing, a gas stove, a new kitchen design. The lady of the house speaks often of a French-trained chef who prepared a marvelous custard at a cousin's estate. The butler says nothing, but his eyes flicker when guests mention Paris. The cook notices, of course she does. But she does not ask questions, not aloud. She simply orders more nutmeg, rolls out a better crust, and serves her best meat pie in months. Let them compare. Let them remember why they never needed anyone else. A surprise order. One morning, the mistress herself enters the kitchen. She does not often do this. She wears gloves indoors. There will be a luncheon, 30 people, outdoor service if weather permits. Everything must be cold, continental preferably. The cook stands silent, face calm. When the mistress leaves, the door barely closes before the kitchen erupts. Cold meats. Outdoor. In this weather. The cook raises one hand. Silence. Then she begins. Jellied tongue, cold roast fowl, cucumber sandwiches, tomato aspic sweet tarts, syllabub in chilled porcelain dishes. A continental spread by a cook who's never seen France. And it is perfect. An unexpected visitor. That evening, while the cook is wrapping up the last of the luncheon preparations, a figure appears at the kitchen door. It is the eldest daughter of the house, now married, living elsewhere. She is rarely seen downstairs. I just wanted to see it again, she says, eyeing the old range. This was the warmest room in the house. She pauses. Do you remember when I broke the jam jars? The cook glances up, 6 of them gooseberry. The young woman smiles. You didn't tell my mother. You cried enough, the cook replies. There is a moment of shared silence. Then the lady leaves, and the kitchen is quiet once more. The heat of goodbye. The luncheon is a success. The food is praised. The aspic glows in the sun. The mistress nods graciously. The master eats everything and asks for more of the ham. The footmen boast about how smooth the service was. The guests leave. The trays come back. All clean. And in the stillness of late afternoon, the cook removes her apron, folds it carefully, and places it on the long wooden table. She is not retiring. She is not being replaced. But she knows deeply, bodily, that this will not last much longer. No one has said so. but she can feel it. Training the next one. They bring in a new kitchen maid, quick with her hands, clever with herbs, eager to please. The cook watches her chop carrots. Too thick. She corrects her quietly. Later, she shows her how to read the range not by looking at it, but by listening. How the rumble changes when the heat is just right. How to test a pot's boil without touching it. The girl listens. She learns. And the cook, though she does not say it, begins passing things down. Not recipes, not instructions, but instinct. The last pudding. It is a Thursday when she bakes her final plum pudding. The fruit has soaked for 3 days, the spice is exact, the cloth is tied with firm knots, it simmers for 6 hours. She lifts it from the pot herself. Her hands shake slightly. When she slices it later, serving it to the staff as a rare treat, the steam rises in perfect spirals. The smell clove, suet, brandy fills the entire kitchen. They all eat in silence. They know, even if she hasn't said it. They know this is the last one she'll make. The quiet exit. There is no farewell banquet, no speech, no gift. The next day, she does not arrive before dawn. The range stays cold. The scullery maid asks what to do with the soup bones. The kitchen maid stares at the spice rack. The new girl looks pale. The housekeeper announces that the cook has left. That is all. The household moves on. But something, a rhythm, a calmness, a gravity is missing. Reflection and closing. To be a cook in a great Victorian house is to command without being seen, to feed without being thanked, to burn with the heat of the stove and never show smoke. She leaves no statue, no portrait. But her legacy lingers in every precise teaspoon, every well-timed tray, every quiet girl who once stood beside her and learned that greatness does not shout. It simmers. Final thought. When the firekeeper leaves her post, does the house grow colder by degrees? Or does it carry her warmth silently in every dish yet to come? Story 8. The under-butler's ledger, duty, dignity, and the weight of silence. If the butler is the face of the household, below stares the voice of formality, the authority at the top of the servant's hierarchy. Then the under-butler is the quiet backbone holding the entire mechanism in place. You do not see him in portraits. He is rarely addressed by name. But his signature is in the cellar book, in the wine stock, in the faintly penciled margin of the linen inventory. He is the under-butler, and he sees everything, remembers everything, fixes what others forget. And he speaks very little. Because in a world ruled by appearances, his greatest power is silence. The man in the middle. He is not the butler, but nearly. He is not one of the footmen, but once was. He is not invisible, but unremarkable, on purpose. He moves through the house like a shadow in tailored wool, keys at his side, ledger in hand. He ensures the dining room candles are trimmed to even lengths, that the wine glasses are spotless, that the visiting colonel's port is served precisely 1 inch from the rim. When others speak, he listens. When others falter, he corrects without drawing attention. His job is not to shine, but to prevent failure. And he is very good at it. The ledger. It is more than just a book. It holds the secrets of the house. Not the dramatic ones, the affairs and arguments, the whispered gossip behind the drapes. Those are of no interest to him. The ledger is more valuable than that. It tells him how many candles are left in the pantry, how many pieces of fish cutlery have gone missing, when the wine merchant last shorted the cellar delivery by a bottle, which chamber pots require replacement, which servant requested a button for his livery coat. It is detail, accuracy, order. The butler may give instructions. The under-butler makes sure they happen. A day in quiet motion. His day begins before the footman. He checks the silver drawer, knotting each piece. He arranges the wine keys and inspects the menu before the cook has lit the range. He double-checks the plate count before luncheon and counts chairs before dinner. When guests arrive, he stands near the sideboard, his eyes steady, his expression unreadable. He doesn't serve a table that is the footman's task, but he watches every tray, every dish, every pour. If a glass is out of place, he lifts a brow. If a mistake is made, he does not scold, he remembers. And later, the offender will find himself polishing cutlery long after the others have retired. Once a footman, he remembers when he stood stiff-backed behind the master's chair, gloved hands gripping a dish of duck à l'orange. He remembers shaking hands, sore feet, the pain of holding a tray too long, the effort of perfect stillness. He rose not because he was the fastest or strongest, but because he watched. He learned the preferences of every guest, knew which wines the master considered provincial, observed how the butler adjusted his tone depending on who sat at the table. And when the former under-butler retired after a slipped hip, he was ready. The master barely remembered his name. The butler did. The mistake that was. One evening, a wine glass goes missing from the drawing room. A small matter, but small matters grow large in houses like this. The butler is furious. A new footman is blamed. The young man denies it, but no one listens. The under-butler says nothing. He simply walks down to the cellar, opens a side cupboard and retrieves the glass, still half full. A guest had wandered, misplaced it. He cleans it silently, returns it, tells no one. Later that night, he leaves a note on the butler's desk. Reconsider the boy. He is not at fault. The boy is reassigned gently. Nothing is ever said. When the butler is absent, once a month the butler leaves the house. He visits his sister in Sussex, takes a train, returns the next day. And during that time, the house does not falter. Because the under-butler steps into the rhythm so seamlessly that no one notices. He does not change the routine. He does not alter the tone. He becomes the butler without claiming the title. When the butler returns, everything is in place. And the under-butler goes back to his shadows. Content. His room. It is small but not poor. Tidy, a copy of Plutarch on the bedside table, a pair of polished shoes under the bed, a watch chain hangs neatly on a hook. There is a portrait on the wall, his mother, drawn in charcoal. She was a housekeeper once, said very little, taught him how to see what others ignored. He sometimes writes letters, though he never sends them. A servant's life is not made for correspondence. It is made for endurance. No ambition left. He does not dream of becoming the butler. He knows the weight of that job. The politics with the housekeeper, the tension with the mistress, the pressure to appear flawless, calm, ever polite. He prefers his place. He prefers to know everything without having to smile. He prefers that his power is quiet. He carries the house in the fold of his ledger. Not the house's pride. Its memory. Unresolved thought. What happens when the one who holds the house's memory quietly slips away without fanfare, without replacement, without ever once stepping forward? The under-butler is not thanked. He is not toasted at Christmas dinner. His birthday passes without mention. There is no apron to hang, no spoon to polish, no final dish to send out. His value lies in what is never noticed. The missing napkin that quietly reappears. The guest who never sees the dent in the wine cooler. The butler who never knows that his coat was rebrushed after he left it in haste. The under-butler fixes the cracks before they spread, and no one ever sees the glue. But the house remembers. The ledger speaks. It is not a dramatic book. There are no secrets in bold ink, no observations about character, just thin, angular handwriting in long columns. March 3, 2 fish knives replaced. March 4, 6 candles short. March 7, delay in laundry return. March 8, port bottle uncorked early. Each entry is a stitch in the house's fabric. It may seem boring, it may seem unnecessary. But if the ledger disappeared, the rhythm would falter. Not all at once, but slowly, like a clock losing time. A footman's misstep. The new footman breaks a glass. A minor offense, but one that requires protocol. The butler demands an apology. The boy stammers. The under-butler steps in not to excuse, but to instruct. "You left the tray unbalanced," he says, guiding the boy's hand on the silver. "Let the weight settle before you turn." He does not punish, he corrects. Later that week, the boy delivers a tray without tremble. The butler gives a quiet nod. The under-butler says nothing. Correction, when offered without pride, builds loyalty. Upstairs echoes. The under-butler rarely ventures upstairs. But when he does, when the butler is indisposed or the staff is stretched thin, he glides through the upper halls like a phantom. The mistress once asked if he had ever considered a position in another house. He had once, years ago, a position in London, more money, greater title. He declined, because to leave this house would mean starting over, learning new rhythms, new faults, new secrets. He has grown into this house, like ivy on old stone. He knows which floorboards creak and which drawers stick. He doesn't want promotion. He wants continuity. When the butler falls ill, the butler, stout, proud, rigid, catches an autumn fever. He refuses to rest, but the master insists. And so the under-butler quietly assumes the role again. The staff know what to do. The housekeeper nods at his orders. The footmen wait for his glance. The kitchen listens when he requests timing. Everything continues, but with a softer hand. No scolding, no barked instructions. Just efficiency. The butler recovers in 5 days. And when he returns, nothing is said, only a low-voiced, "Thank you." The under-butler nods once and steps back into the quiet. A broken decanter. One evening, the master notices a hairline crack in a crystal decanter. No one else would have. He gestures silently. The butler frowns. The under-butler slips away, fetches another from the store, replaces it before dessert is served. The wine is poured. No mention is made. Later, he scribbles in the ledger. Decanter 3, etched glass replaced 8:15 p.m. The house forgets the mistake, because it never had to remember it. The clock in the hall. There is a grandfather clock in the front hall. It runs 5 minutes fast. Not by accident. The under-butler keeps it that way because the mistress tends to run late, and this way she arrives on time. The staff know, the butler knows, the family does not. This is one of 1,000 small interventions. One of 1,000 quiet manipulations that keep the household appearing graceful, effortless, refined. All traced, if you look carefully enough, back to a man with a thin ledger and a pencil stub. Memory and mirrors. The under-butler walks the house at night sometimes, after the lamps are dimmed and the sounds have softened to creaks and whispers. He inspects, he adjusts, he notes. But mostly he remembers. He remembers when the eldest daughter was small and spilled lemonade on the stair, when the cook burst into tears one night after the soup burned, when the master laughed, truly laughed, over a dinner of lamb stew long before the gout. He does not journal. He does not speak. But he holds these memories in the rhythm of his steps and the calm of his silence. The things he fixes. A door hinge that squeaks once every 3 months. A rug corner that curls just enough to catch a heel. A tray that lists to the left. A drawer that sticks in humid weather. A wine label that peels. A chair leg that wobbles. A spoon handle bent in a forgotten scuffle. A lock that's never been quite right. He fixes them all, without note, without need for thanks, because he knows the house should not notice its own scars. Reflection and closing. The under-butler is not remembered in songs or stories. He does not inherit the house. He does not sign invitations. He does not sit at the family table. But he preserves the illusion of perfection. He smooths the fraying edges. He absorbs every error before it becomes a scandal. He maintains the pulse. And when he is gone, the house will falter. Not all at once, but in missed details, in quiet frustrations, in the absence of a man who once knew exactly when to refill the ink, tighten the hinge, close the window. Final thought. What becomes of a life spent in the service of maintaining silence? When memory lives only in a ledger and the house forgets to remember, does the under-butler disappear, or does he become part of the very walls he once tended? He does not expect a farewell, not because he is unloved, but because he was never meant to be seen. That is the under-butler's paradox. The more perfectly he performs, the less likely anyone is to notice he was ever there. But the house runs because he ran it. Not by command, but by consistency. Not by charm, but by clarity. And now, slowly, he prepares to step away, not with fanfare, but with clean entries and a ledger that balances to the last inch of port. The notice. He writes it in the neatest script, blotted carefully, placed in the butler's office inbox. Sir, I shall be concluding my service at the end of the month, as discussed. The ledger will be closed and passed on with all supporting inventories. J.H. That is all. No mention of years. No mention of thanks. Just the facts. Just as he prefers. Reactions below stairs. The kitchen maid stares at the news when it spreads. But he's always been here, she murmurs. He trained 3 footmen, one mutters. He never once raised his voice. He knew what I needed before I knew it myself, says the junior housemaid. The staff gather quietly in corners, uncertain what a household looks like without him. The butler nods when he hears, says only he deserves his rest. But the wrinkle in his brow lingers all week. Passing it on. He trains the footman who shows the most precision, not the fastest, nor the most charming, but the one who notices when a glass has been moved half an inch. He hands over the wine log, the candle usage chart, the seasonal linen schedule. He explains, calmly, how to listen to the pipes in the west wing to know if the laundry cistern is backing up, how to test the stair treads for wear, how to note which servants may need quiet correction and which require firm reproof, how to be present without presence. The footman listens, worried, grateful, silent. A visit from the master. It is unexpected. The master enters the pantry hallway himself, something he has not done in years. He finds the under-butler adjusting the table service schedule. I heard you are leaving. Yes, sir, at month's end. You've been with us how long now? 23 years, sir. The master pauses. You've kept this house steady. The under-butler inclines his head. It is the house that gave me steadiness, sir. A quiet nod. No sentimentality. Just a mutual understanding of duty rendered and duty done. The final entry. March 30. Final cellar count completed. Table linen rotation assigned. Service notes handed to Mr. D. Glass inventory balanced. Ledger closed. He puts the pencil down, straightens the binding, closes the book, and for the first time in over 2 decades, he has no more notes to make. The last walk. He walks the house that night, not because he must, but because he always has. The halls are quiet. The ticking of the hallway clock still runs 5 minutes fast. He smiles. He checks the dining room. The polished wood reflects the candlelight. He checks the butler's pantry. Everything is in its place. He visits the linen press, the silver drawer, the cellar door. And then he climbs the stairs. To the servants' quarters. To the room he will leave behind. A small room, yes, but in it, he shaped an entire house's rhythm. Reflection and closing. In the world above stairs, grandeur makes history. But below, it is precision. Routine. Silence. The under-butler leaves no monument. He is not painted. He is not quoted in books. But the house will continue to run, quietly for months, perhaps even years, off the momentum of his remembered care. The wine will pour smoothly. The candles will burn evenly. The ledger, now in new hands, will carry forward his values not of ambition, but of grace in the margins. Final thought. When the last entry is written, and the door closes behind the man who remembered everything, who will recall the one who ensured history, never noticed the small disasters that nearly happened.